generated a bit of a debate on whether you exempt at the point of contributing or when someone is actually picking their benefits. And then the issue of access at 60 years vis-a-vis the current 55 years. But all those are going to come out clearly in the panel discussion. I would like to make this as engaging and involving as possible. So would want your input. I've seen Mr. Kayondo from Kasita, you're most welcome. And other members I can see arriving. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are, like we mentioned at the beginning, we are live, and we are on the hashtag NSSF Bill 19, all capital letters. Now, for those who want to follow also that discussion and what's happening online, you can look at your right on that notes board. There's a password for internet. You can log in there and probably start to pick the inputs of Ugandans that are watching us and following us online. So at this moment, ladies and gentlemen, let me invite our panelists for the this morning's discussion. I'll start with Mr. Richard Byarugaba and invite him to take his seat on the podium. Then he'll be followed by Mr. Jet Tushabe. Mr. Jet Tushabe is from BDO, Uganda. BDO is a tax consultants firm. You're most welcome, Jet. Then we have Mr. Wilson Owere. He's from Notu. Then we have Mrs. Neima Bukenya from Platform for Labour Action. And then Mr. Katabas Patrick, a tax expert from CS Bank. Once again, we'd like to recognize the support. NTV is doing this in collaboration with critical partners here. Of course, we have Siatini, we have Action Aid, and we have Oxfam. So at this point, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to delve into the issues that have been raised by Mr. Richard Byarugaba, but most importantly, the bill, the NSSF, the proposed NSSF Amendment Act 2019. And I think at this particular moment, I understand we have some members of parliament that have joined us. You're most welcome, our honorables. It's very important that we have them on board because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are going to have a major input in this because the bill is now in their hands and we are looking forward to hearing from them. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start our panel discussion by, extending it to an opportunity to Mr. Wilson Owere. Like I said at the beginning, this discussion, the key constituent in this discussion are the workers, because we're talking about workers' money. And Richard told us that 2.5 million workers have been able to save 11 trillion Uganda shillings. And today, workers have made NSSF a very solid entity. I mean, if you talk about liquidity, money, and in terms of asset, I think it's the most liquid and strong asset-based entity we have in this country. So, Mr. Wele, to start with you briefly, what are your views about, first of all, the tax proposals that have been, incorporated in these proposed amendments? What are your views on the general area of tax as a representative of workers?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank NTV, Action Aid, and the other organization for organizing this breakfast and also this dialogue, because it's very, very important. And out there, many people are watching, many people want to have information on the new amendments. I just want to give you, first of all, the background of this amendment, because most people think it just came out of blue. No. There was a struggle between us and the government, whether to liberalize or to amend the law. And for us, we stuck on our gun and said we want the NSSF Act to be amended. Now, why did we go for amendments? Because the NSSF Act is very solid. It has a lot of security for our money and safeguards. So we didn't want anybody to destroy that. Because the Liberalization Act bill which was being fronted had first mission was, first of all, to do away with the NSSF Act. And that was very, very dangerous. And within the new bill, there was now safeguards in that bill. So for us, from the word go, we really labored, and I want to thank, first of all the stakeholders for the support, that now we are focusing on amending this act. Now, the amendment is very, very good. But I think the fear now in this act are around two. The first one is the taxation, which even me I have not understood. However much the NSSF and government have explained, it's yet not understandable. But of late, they have brought the figures out, because what people want to know exactly, what are we getting out of the money? Because now, for me, I'm about to get my money. Is it going to affect me? Is it going to do to this law? Is it going to affect somebody after the 30 years or immediately? Those are areas we need to understand. And why tax the money which is already taxed? Because it can maybe, people are looking at it as double taxation, which I think there must be serious clarity on that. Now, another area for us as workers who are thinking that, you know, our population is the youngest population. We need to plan for them. Actually, is it 72 or 73% of our people are very, very young? Now, when you have that young population, my only problem with the government is that they have failed to plan for this population. Because if you have 73% of young people energetic, and you cannot use that manpower to build the country, then you have to plan for them for social security. Now, the social security we have, I'm happy Richard has just mentioned that we have about 99% of the population of around, is it 45? That is dangerous. Now, the area of telling me that I have to wait until 60 years to get the money, that's also a question. Because our view as workers would like to see people progressing using our own money. Now, you keep this money for many years, 30 years, 40 years, then at the end of it, again you want to chop it. That's where there's a lot of question mark. Now, other areas we would like to see other benefits. Look at most of these workers who are in the informal sector, those even, not only informal sector, but formal work, like the security guards and so on, those who don't even have health care at all. They sleep outside in the mosquito. At the end of the day, the money they get, they spend in what? For treatment. Now, these are people we want to at least look at them. Why can't NSSF have some benefits for them, like health care, health insurance, and so on? Now, look at young people who are working. Most people are grumbling with the loans in the bank. They are supposed to you find you have borrowed from this bank, you are in cooperative society and so on, but your money is in NSSF. Now, even when you have lost a job, you are on the street at 45, you cannot access the money. There must be a provision of accessing that money at a certain age, so that when you resume work, then you continue with what? With the saving. These are some of the things that we want to see in this bill. But you know, there's a problem in this country. The bill is good. There are many things that we have proposed in that bill. And one of them, we want people to access money at a certain age, not really at 60. You know, at 60, somebody is, I've clocked that, yeah, but now, there's no way now you can start running around that you are going for business and so on. Let us have a win-win situation like you are saying. You want this bill to have a win. Let's have a win-win situation where you are investing the money, I'm also investing, then at the end of it, we are all happy. But you keep my money for all these years, you are making profits, you only give me at the end of the year. This is where we need to debate and come out with something tangible for the working people.
Thank you very much, Mr. Were. I think at this point I will bring in Jet from BDO, because you raised an important point when you're starting your submission about tax. And we have a tax expert on the panel. And as you come in, Jet, you'll give us a bit of clarification. But specifically, one of the things that comes out in the amendment proposals is that benefits, currently they're not taxed. But the proposal is that benefits, because of course the assumption is that they are taxed at the point of contribution. So the proposal is to tax at the point the member is going to pick that money. The proposal is that that's when that tax should be deducted of the benefits. I would like to pick your views on that, but even as you put that together, there is again another provision that for income contributed, not exceeding 30%, rather if someone contributes something that is below 30% of their income, they are tax exempt. Now, if you contribute 30% and above, then you tax liable. Picking from what Richard, and I think Richard will also respond to this, has been presenting to us, we still have a challenge of a poor savings culture. I'm imagining if someone saves 30 and above of their income with NSSF, it will be a good way to encourage them to even save more and probably maybe remove the tax. But if you tax me for saving 30% and above, and we creating a contradiction there, maybe Jet can help us understand that a little better.
Thank you, Charles. I would like also to add my voice to thanking the organizers of this dialogue. We appreciate the engagement. It is through such engagements that we share ideas to improve our social security. And I've seen, Richard, the history has given. It is incumbent upon us to make sure that we come up with views and suggestions to help Richard and his team make NSSF a better investment for us. Because if you look at the history for the past 10-year performance, NSSF has done well, but there's a lot of room for improvement. Like Richard has shown, there's a possibility of doubling the 11.2 trillion. And one of the ways to achieve that is to encourage savings, and one of the mechanisms is to tweak a bit the tax structure of Social Security. I think there has been a bit of misconception that when you're taxing benefits at the time of payment, there's a problem because currently it is not being taxed. That's not true. What is true is that at the point of contribution, currently, the 5% contribution you make is subjected to tax by URA. That's not it. when NSSF invests that money, that is the 5% that you contributed as an employee, the 10% your employer contributed, total 15, NSSF gets that money and invests it in different asset classes, government securities, equities, and all that. And when NSSF gets a return on that investment, it is taxed. So, meaning that what you get at the moment is after the taxation has happened at the point of contribution and at the point of NSSF getting the return. So what NSSF is able to give or allocate to the members at present is the net after tax. So what now is changing is, instead of taxing the employee at the point the employee is contributing, in other words, let the employee get that extra 15,000 in the example Richard gave, which increases their take home. On top of that, instead of giving tax to URA on the returns that NSSF has invested, let's reinvest it so that it accumulates more returns on an annual basis, such that by the time the employee retires, the accumulated savings have grown. And if they have grown, in other words, you have grown the cake, then that's the time URA should come to ask for a share of the pie, a bigger pie. Because at the moment, it is a smaller pie. So everybody gets a smaller share. But once a bigger share is a big pie is created, that means that the employee will walk away with a bigger pie, URA will walk away with a bigger pie. That's the current spirit of taxing benefits at the time of payment rather than at the time of contribution. And the spirit is good. And when you look at the numbers, how they play out, of course with assumptions, the intention is good. But of course, there are gaps in that, given the way the law is structured. And there are areas which need to be improved in order to make sure that this individual who is contributing their 5% and the employer contributes 10%, when they retire, they are able to get something that can be of value, can be of use, they can use to sustain their quality of life. Richard gave an example of that on average, an employee, when they retire, they get 15 million shillings. That is after tax, after all the taxes has happened. But the question is, in our current Uganda, and where Uganda is going, how much can somebody do with 15 million at retirement? How much? Then the thing there is, there's also a problem with the taxation, because even with the current proposal, which has good intentions, it doesn't address the problem of that individual who is getting 15 million. Because if he's getting 15 million, it means that you're going to apply a 30% tax at the end when they are getting that money. How much will they remain with if you apply 30%? That means that there's a need to redesign the taxation structure such that such an individual who gets small amount of money at the end, because by the time someone makes 15 million over 10 years or 20 years, it means that the monthly income they have been getting is so meager that it has accumulated 15 million, even with the good returns that Richard is giving. So there's need to make sure that the taxation framework at the point of benefits is adjusted to cater for low-income earners, such that you have a sort of a threshold that if you're getting, say, 50 million at the end of your retirement, it shouldn't be subject to tax. They say you are, regardless of which age, you're 50 years under various reasons, or you're 55 or 59, you shouldn't be taxed. That is one part. Then the other part which needs to be looked at is for you to benefit from the tax exemption, you have to be 60 years. In our current life expectancy, where on average a man lives 60 years and a woman 65 years, what will that person do with that money at that point? Remember, one of the challenges we have as a country is when someone gets their NSSF, they barely can use it for anything. They consume it instead of investing it. So meaning that one of the things I think Richard is looking at is when you retire and you have access to your money, what products do they have for you? So that you don't take all the money, but they give you different products for you to have a livelihood and you invest that money. But the question is, if someone gets their 50 million, at 60 years, can they go to the farm? Can they run around to put some money in a poultry, in agriculture? Can they do that? So I think that's where it comes in to say that people should have access to money even before 60 years, such that they are able to, if it is 50 years or 55, they should have access to it within a certain threshold without taxation, such that they are able to leave some money to Richard to reinvest, or get some money out and invest it in other ventures when they have some little energy at that time. And that way it will create more multiplier effect and create job creation. I think I should go to the last question. I've explained a lot on that. On the 30%, what essentially the bill is saying that let's open up contribution. Let's not limit it to 5%. Our savings are low, like Richard said, which is good. We should encourage savings. So the bill itself does not limit how much savings you can make. It doesn't. It says you can save as much as you can, and you get returns on your investment. But when it comes to tax exemption, the bill is saying that we shall exempt you on the 5%, contribute up to, on your contribution, employee contribution, up to 30%. Taking the example of 1 million gross salary, if at the moment you've been contributing 5%, that is 50,000. The bill is saying the 50,000 will not be taxed. You only pay tax on the 950. But then the bill is saying you can contribute as much as you can, but there is a catch of up to 30% exemption. So meaning that you can contribute up to 300,000. 300,000 will go untaxed. But if you contribute above 300,000 on your 1 million, the extra will be subject to tax. So that is, I think, what the bill says, and probably government is saying that, look guys, we want to encourage savings, we want to grow the NSSF, but as government, we also need money to operate other government programs. So we cannot let employees go without contributing anything. Because the more you contribute the 1 million, let's say where tax was, say, 300, your net is 700, or rather 650. It means that if you have to put that 650 into NSSF, then it means that URA will not go with anything at that point. And government is saying, no, let's have something. The only thing maybe which needs to be enhanced in the bill is at the point of contribution, you're saying the excess above 30% will be taxed. But when it comes to taxation of benefits, that excess is not exempted from tax. So there's a risk that it would be taxed again at the point of benefits. So there's need to have the bill adjusted to make sure that that threshold, once someone exceeds it and they are taxed at the point of contribution, then they shouldn't be taxed again at the time of accessing that benefit.
All right. Thank you very much, Jet. And I think Neymar here, I'll bring in Richard quite very fast, but after Neymar had made a submission, because I think there are a couple of issues that have been raised, which I think he would like to respond to. But Neymar, as you come in, Neymar is from Platform for Labour Action, so this really sits where you sit. I want you to also address yourself to the issue of the average beneficiary from NSSF, because Richard has already told us that the average beneficiary takes around 15 million Uganda shillings. How do we protect this person more? I know Jet has talked about exemption, but how do we, because if it's the bulk of the contributor, then, and the benefits that they are able to draw out of, that contribution is as they are, and they are still taxed. What are your views on that? And again, on the tax aspect. But before you come in, I would like to recognize in a specific way the presence of Mr. Moses Dombo, the country director, Oxfam. You're most welcome. Yes, and among the members of parliament we have Mr. Ogon Silas, the MP for Komi Municipality. Honorable, you're most welcome. And then Honorable Rose Mutonyi Masava, the MP Bubulo West in Manafa District. And then Honorable Mbwate Kamwa, MP Kasambia County in Mubende. It's very important to have these members of parliament in our midst, because, like we said, the bill is before them now, and their input is going to be very, very critical. Also, I would like to recognize in a special way the attention of the audience. You're keenly following this discussion, because it really sits at the core of our survival for tomorrow. I can say that. So, Neymar, please, you can come in and make your submission on tax.
Thank you, Charles. I would like to also add my voice to my colleagues who have appreciated NTV and the partners for organizing this dialogue. It's quite relevant, and we really need to put our heads together in coming up with the best tax, or the best way to reflect the interests of the workers. There have been a couple of points that have been brought out by Jet, and these kind of point towards how the bill will affect the average person. So I would like us to really understand what is currently being done when taxing benefits. Currently, we have three-level. Generally the retirement benefits or pension schemes are taxed at 3 levels, and currently we are taxed at level 1 and level 2. At level 1, that's when they tax the members' contribution. I mean the 5% contribution to the fund. That means if I'm earning 1 million, that money will first be subjected to a general pay-as-you-earn tax before the deduction to NSSF is made. So when the deduction is made, it has already been subjected to a tax. And again, if the contribution is invested in the fund and profits are made of it, then that's also subjected to a tax. And currently, at the point of withdrawal, we are not taxed. And what the bill seems to propose is the EET strategy, where we will be exempted at contribution, and then investment, and then a tax will be imposed at withdrawal. I would like to point out the intention behind the bill, which is intended to encourage saving, because generally it has been discussed that we lack, or Ugandans are not saving much, or we are not saving enough. And we want to understand whether this will encourage saving by taxing the lump sum saving in the benefit. So if we say that a tax is imposed at the point of withdrawal, this strategy kind of makes every worker in Uganda be subjected or put under the tax threshold. Currently, there are people who are exempted from paying tax. those ones who are earning less than 235,000 shillings. So those people are not paying tax. But with the current proposal, or the proposal that is being fronted, these will also be taxed at the point of withdrawal, because that lump sum that they will have accumulated over a period of time will fall under the tax threshold. And going back to your point, Richard, that will not be protecting the most marginalized person or the least earning person by imposing a tax on such small earnings. The other concern that we had a discussion as civil society organizations on the implications of this amendment. And we realized that the bill seems to strategically introduce a mandatory retirement age, which is 60. Because if it provides there under that if you wait or you hold on to withdraw your savings until you're 60, you'll be exempted. This means almost everyone would wish to be exempted. No one would want to pay the tax. So there will be a problem with the current age that is already set in the current act that says that a member can access their funds at 55. But he pointed out that at 60 there is nothing much someone can do, especially when they are looking to invest their savings. So we were proposing that if the midterm access that has been proposed in the bill for the voluntary contributors can be extended to everyone saving with a fund, to at least access their savings, the 5% contribution. We're not saying that entire 15%, because there is a 5% contribution by the member, and then there is the 10% contribution by the employer. But if it can be restricted to the 5%, and this percentage can be accessed at least 45 years of age, someone can invest that money in something that they can monitor, because they still, at 45, I believe, we are all able to monitor the different, business investments that we can establish at that point. But at 60, you cannot do so much with that money. Our proposal is that you do not wipe out all your savings, but access only the 5% to enable you to, at least as you're waiting for the final lump sum that you'll get after retirement, you are able to also to invest somewhere else in any business of your choice. We also realized that while the bill introduces an exemption on the fund, on the investments made, this exemption is not applied to the worker or to the workers that are saving with a fund. When you look at the proposed tax on the lump sum, it does not say that this will be exempted. While the fund is exempted from paying a tax on the investment or the profits made, the member is not exempted. They will be subjected to a tax, and we believe that is unfair if it's applied in that manner, when the fund is being exempted, but the worker is subjected to a tax. We propose that the fund pays a tax to also contribute to the revenues that the government is to collect from these savings. Also, there is a proposal to broaden the coverage, which is good. The bill is doing so well by broadening the definition of the coverage. It has incorporated like companies, partnerships, and all. However, for us who mainly engage with employees, and especially employees in the informal sector, we have discovered that there are so many workers who are employed by individuals, and individuals are not defined in the definition of an employer. So we propose that this is captured, because there are so many people who would be left out if the employer is excluded from this definition.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, an individual, because there are so many individuals who are employing people and they would not be covered. If this could be captured, then almost every worker would benefit from that proposal. For now, I believe those are mostly what we pointed out as the major concerns of the tax implication proposed by the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neema. I'm sure Richard is taking notes, and we'll give him some quick time, a few moments to respond to that. As Mr. Katavas warms up to respond to the question of investment. But Richard first.
Thank you. Lots of questions. So I'd like to start off with 2 slides that I would like projected up there. If you could give me the touch screen, so so that I can change. Okay, so this is a very busy slide, but I'd like everybody to pay attention to it. We've basically looked at the current scenario, which is, I believe, on your side, it's on the left. So today, if somebody were receiving a salary of million shillings, and today they are taxed on their 5% contribution, the amount of money that would be invested is 54 million shillings. That is for a 30-year period, okay? So you're on a salary of 1 million shillings, you save for 30 years. The total amount of money that you would contribute, you and your employer would contribute, would be 50 million shillings. The amount of money that NSSF would make from your contribution within that period is 308 million shillings. And out of that, NSSF would pay 61 million shillings. So the amount of tax that both you and NSSF would pay would be 67 million shillings. And you would take home a lump sum of 300 and 900 and whatever thousand shillings. So that is what currently happens, all right? That's why I've been saying that if you did save for quite a while, you can see that a lot of the money you actually put in is not what you get. What you get is more money that NSSF invests. In the scenario that we are proposing, where it is an ETT, all right, I think it has been explained. So the current scenario is a TTE. In other words, they tax you at contributions, they tax NSSF, they exempt you at the benefit. You would get about 40 million shillings more. And the breakdown would be that NSSF would have more money to make out of your money. So you can see that you're investing the same amount of money, 54 million shillings. But this time, NSSF, because it's not paying tax, it's got a huge amount of investment that is made out of it, 432 million. And the money on your account would be 486 million, if you include in the principal that you've collected yourself, that you've paid in yourself. And therefore, if you were to pay an interest rate, if you were to pay tax at that stage, we would pay 145 million shillings, and therefore you'd get 40 million shillings more. This is a model which we've used to come up with the win-win. So you can see that government gets more tax. So instead of the 67 million shillings that they would have got in the current situation, they are getting 145 million. You, a member, instead of getting 300 million shillings, you are getting 340 million shillings. There's no magic about this. The magic is that you have more money to invest, you're making more money, and therefore the taxman has more money to tax from, but he leaves you enough to give you more than you would have got if you were not taxed at the very beginning. That's the reason why we are recommending this. Just share another slide. Sorry, it should be the other way around. Let's start off with the world. The world, as you can see, is almost entirely on an EET situation. So you can see this is a slide of all the countries that are within the OECD, in other words, the developed countries. You can see that very few of them have our current system of an sort of a TTE, right? You can see that the current one there is Australia, New Zealand, and Turkey, where they have a TTE regime. Of course, the triple E is the generous countries, generous with their social security. So you got Bulgaria, Colombia, Mexico, Slovak Republic. So those are the ones that are really quite generous. But you'll see that most countries, they actually allow you to make the money on contributions, to contribute more, the funds to invest more, but then they tax you when you pick the money. And you can see that the biggest box around all of them is the system that we'd like to go to. Coming to East Africa, all right, you can also see that even within the East African region, Burundi is the exception. They have a triple E, but Kenya has already gone to the EET because they've had recent reforms and they have moved to the EET. You can see that it is Uganda and Tanzania, which is really bad, and a bit of, Rwanda is also slightly better. They tax you at the contribution stage, but then the fund and the contributions are not taxed. But that's because they run a largely defined benefit scheme, which means that they actually put in very little money, and much of it is generated out of a formula that is determined, which I talked about. I don't think you can look at Sudan. Sudan and Burundi really are the weaker ones within this group. So you can see that the future is really what Kenya has done and the rest of the world have been able to do. So when we suggest an EET regime, really we are working towards what the future is, and the future is to give the member more money and to give you, the tax collector, more money so that everybody has a win-win situation.
Thank you very much, Richard.
So let me talk a little bit about some of the issues that have been raised specifically.
Okay.
I think one that catches my eye is on double taxation. I would like to assure members that as soon as this law is passed, your current account will be boarded off, the current investments will be boarded off, and they will be continue to run under the old scheme, which would be, you wouldn't contribute, of course, more money into that account. However, the investment income would continue to be taxed, and you would get your money tax-free. So the issue of double taxation for the current amount of money that is there would not arise because you would stop contributing there. However, the would continue to pay tax on the revenues, and you would get your money tax-free. Of course, in the new regime, we would open a new account for you. Your contributions would not be taxed. The income that we make out of those contributions would not be taxed. However, should you wish to withdraw them before the age of 60, that's when they would be taxed. Let me give you two numbers, and I would like everybody to remember these two numbers. Ugandans don't like to save. Can I say that again in a more polite way? We don't like to save. The reason is this. The only reason NSSF is collecting your money is because you're forced to save. Because government has asked you to save. The numbers tell it. We did research. We asked people who had been saving for us at receiving their money. We asked them, if there was no law of NSSF, would you have saved money with NSSF? Only 20% would have said, I would have saved. In other words, I would have voluntarily saved. That number is very near the 10% people who have some other form of savings apart from NSSF. So in other words, we don't like to save. The only reason we save is because of the law. You can say that, you can agree to that or you can't, but deep in your heart you all know it. You don't like to save, you people, including myself. When we then asked them, if NSSF was forced you to save by law, but gave you products which enabled you to do midterm access, medical, and housing, would you save voluntarily to NSSF? that number went up to 80%. So even without a law, if NSSF were to introduce the products that are being currently talked about in the law, Ugandans would actually save voluntarily. So for me, the answer is very, very clear. The reforms will give NSSF an opportunity to talk to our customers and come up with products to encourage them to save voluntarily, which is why the tax is also a good help. It helps government collect more, it helps individuals make better decisions. And I think it brings in point the very good point that was made, I believe, by, I think, I can't remember your name. Sorry, what's your name? Rehema. Very good point, which is, let us allow midterm access, perhaps at the age of 45, and let us maybe work with some of the money that we save ourselves, in other words, the 5% that you're dealing with. Maybe let's allow more flexibility on that. But I don't want to make that decision. I want the members of parliament with enough research, with enough information from the public to tell them, and also from their accruals, because I would like everybody to talk to the professionals. The professionals they are called actuarial scientists, who mine this data and come up with the answers to these solutions. Because I do not want us to go ahead and make these decisions without going with the data. We've made our proposals based on the data we've been able to analyze and also talk to our customers, and we see what their requirements are. And I think that a lot of those requirements have actually been included within the law. So, products are great, but we must also realize that the purpose of NSSF was not to care for you during your mid-term, your short-term requirements. What NSSF was meant to do for you is to give you something when you are age 60. It is not for your school fees, it is not for your rent, it is not for your health, it was meant to be for your pension. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. I'll move to Patrick very briefly before I come to the plenary. I know we'd like to hear from our members of parliament input on this. So as they prepare for that, I'll come to you, Patrick, and this is deliberate, to have you come in at this level, because you represent civil society on issues budget. And when we talk budget, we talk tax. You're from civil society advocacy group, CSBAC. Now, from Richard's presentation, we see two things coming up. He raised the issue of our tax to GDP ratio being wanting, and at the same time, there's an issue of savings to GDP ratio still wanting. And I would like to pick your mind on this, on how you believe, we can create that balance where you have the savings encouraged through NSSF, who are the biggest mobilizers of savings, but at the same time, not hurting the tax side and not taxing, rather hurting the saver side. How do we create that balance? How do we wrap that together in one quote?
Yes, I think it is very important to appreciate that when the state is implementing the right social protection or social security, it is important to appreciate that it is an obligation on part of the state from the international law perspective, but also from our national law. So, but the debate about on social security in Uganda, I think has not been very robust for different reasons. And one of the reasons being the history that Richard has been able to elaborate here at the start of this discussion. So we think that our social security is for addressing our short-term challenges. And for me, that's the genesis of the contradictions that we normally see in a discourse such as this one. Specific to your question about investment and taxation, my view is that a tax plays a very important role. But for the purposes of this discussion, I'm looking at a tax as a motivation for a member saving with NSSF to wait until they attain the age of 60 to be able to get a full benefit. But also want to look at it on the other side. Can't we use tax to motivate a member to voluntarily save? Because if we are opening up space for voluntary saving, and then we are introducing a tax on it, are we therefore promoting people to voluntarily save? So my view here is that when you open up for voluntary saving, especially so to the informal sector, the issue of taxation would certainly be treated a little bit differently. I want to give you an example. This state under the NSSF, the current NSSF law, mandates you to contribute 5%. The employer, 10%. So there is a reason why these figures are kept at the bare minimum. And in my view, that is to afford the lowest minimum possible social protection or social security comfort at the qualifying age. So once that is kept at the bare minimum, in my view, I would be very comfortable if the tax does not extend to that area. So if I want then to make a voluntary contribution, maybe I have already satisfied the bare minimum that I must meet as an individual to now look at a scenario of investing money. So to that very end, I'm looking at my voluntary contribution to NSSF as an additional investment beyond my minimum contribution. So to me, if that attracted a tax, probably then that would make me compare very many products in the market, such as saving my money, additional saving to NSSF, or taking it to the bank if we are to have NSSF, if we are to project that NSSF is going to keep operating in the same way it is operating right now. So what am I saying? And with this tax that is coming up, aren't we going to drive people to making decisions as to whether they should invest money voluntarily with NSSF or with a fixed deposit bank account? So if we do not make tough decisions right now, you will have a scenario where I will not be motivated to invest my money in NSSF because ultimately it will attract a tax. So, but I wanted also to make comments on the issue of mid-term access. Richard has said that Parliament should make that decision. I think entities such as NSSF and the government generally, the whole government infrastructure, should be able to generate this research and be able to take it to Parliament, and then Parliament should either approve or then probably make additional research. But if you are to say we are not committing ourselves to a qualifying age for mid-term access, I think we are going to create a dilemma at Parliament level, aware of the fact that Parliament in most cases may not have adequate time to look at these matters. So the previous proposal was 45 years. That was the previous proposal. So I need for me, before this bill gets so much into Parliament, I want the technocrats from the ministry to have an input on the issue of mid-term access. And let us not have mid-term access clogged with issues of regulations. Let us have the key principles under mid-term access well articulated in a bill so that it actually enables the board to come up with with proper regulations. So the other point that I think is also very important for employers, rather for employees. Generally, we cannot look at benefits going to an employee because of the calculation, the tax calculation that has been impressed upon us. So we'll have to look at NSSF, our funds at NSSF in a bigger picture. We must know that these calculations that are flying all over the place are based on assumptions. And the assumption being the current tax regime. What guarantees do we have that we shall have a consistent tax regime? So what guarantees do we have? So in absence of guarantees on the tax regime for years to come, is it therefore possible to discuss the minimum interest, as an example, that NSSF should pay to save us in all possible scenarios? You know, the parliamentary pension scheme, as an example, has an embedded limit below which a member cannot, above which a member can be paid after getting the qualifications for pension. So if we cannot have these guarantees, you will have a scenario where you are going to have the principal of the money that you're saving being the one that is subjected to tax if you have not been able to make, if they have not been able to generate adequate interest for one reason or the other. And why do I say so? Not long ago, when NSSF had problems, we had NSSF downgrading from 7% to 3%. And even I think at that time that was very generous. We are happy under the able leadership at NSSF right now that we can get more than 10%. So for me, we should open up a debate on this whole thing. Because if we do not, we are going to say win-win situation. Government will look at the amount of money that will be generated through taxes. They will be very happy. We rushed passing this thing. Tomorrow the tax regime is going to change. And then you find all the savings that you have generated for a long time with probably a little interest on it being subject to tax and being to your disadvantage. Lastly, as I said, the bigger picture for this should be on how we are going to be contributing money to NSSF, but also how NSSF is going to be using that money. There's a catch in this law that you must have read about called government lending.
Patrick, before you go to the catch, I would like to come to that after this discussion from the plenary, because the next topic we're going to be talking about investment, how NSSF invests this money and where it's going to invest, and of course that particular provision. Right now I wanted us to look at the tax elements, because that has been quite critical and has aroused quite some very interesting debates. So thank you very much. We'll come back to that. You mentioned the issue of guarantees on the tax regime changing, and of course we know the people who are in charge of making the laws in this country, and I think tax laws included are members of parliament, and we are honored. We have a couple of them. So I would like to pick the minds of our members of parliament who are here and are ready to input on this before we can bring the discussion to. All right. I see Honorable Mwatekamwa and Honorable, yeah, then, okay.
Thank you so much. And I wish to thank all the panelists. First and foremost, I wish to disagree with one of the panelists who said Ugandans don't wish even to save. After all, they don't even have what to save. So they would have wished, but they don't, they have less. They wish actually. Then, and one of you said that this is a win-win situation. I'm not seeing a win-win situation in this case. One, by the time someone is 60, as some other discussants have said, honestly, you can even, it's very rare if you can sleep without even taking a painkiller at 60, because you're weak. So at 60, I'm just looking a kind of investment I'm going to do One time benefited from NSSF, that is 2016, when I came to Parliament. I got my 40 million by the age of 37. I built a school. At least in a year, I can get 45 million as my profit. So, at 60, why should you leave people to get all that 60? If anything, we should be thinking about reducing the age to 40 and someone can access the money. Why am I saying like this? Okay. Secondly, I would have wished to see more incentives. And no member of parliament should even deceive you. For us, we have even better incentives. What we think Ugandans should even get. I can get my pension, I can borrow my pension at a certain percentage. Why shouldn't you even allow Ugandans who have saved their money, they can access a certain percentage? We have a better one. I can access, I think, 30% of my savings, and I cannot even leave it to stay with my pension scheme. Actually, I borrowed it because I can put it to use when I'm still active. Then, liberalization of economy. How I would have wished my brother from employment fraternity, I think, second from my left. How I wish you also encouraged liberalization of this scheme. Because now, who determines that interest you're giving me at the end of the year? The board, 2, 3, 4, 7 people, you sit and decide either we give 14 and what. But if we had very many schemes, they would be offering better opportunities, higher interest rates, and I would even speak and say, I'm going with this one, I'm leaving with this one. And lastly, taxing at the exit my lump sum savings. Why shouldn't you think about only taxing the interest rate, what you would have, what my money would have earned, only that, but my saving, you leave my saving as my saving. Why shouldn't you think about that? If maybe you gave me 15% of every year, at the end of exit, at the exit, why shouldn't you tax only the profit and you leave my lump sum? Why do you need to do with my lump sum? I thank you so much, and I'm ready to oppose everything if you don't change. I'm here to back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable. And I think I would like to come to you for tips on investment before Honorable comes in. Because if you built a school with 40 million, that is really quite commendable. But Honorable Masaba.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. My comment is on why government taxes the exit instead of at the savings, just as Honorable Kamwa has said. I would rather they tax me at the beginning when I'm earning, because I'm still fresh and I can do work. And let them wait for those who fall under the threshold, because they feel that those don't have enough to be taxed at the beginning. Then they can wait for them at the end when the money has accumulated. Because at the beginning, they didn't pay. But to tax, to give somebody a leeway, and then at the end, maybe I've not brought it well, but I feel that if government wants to tax and finds some people are under the threshold, they can wait and tax them at the end as they are proposing. But for those who are within the threshold, should be taxed before the savings, so that they forget about it. But when you have accumulated your little thing, and then they give you the blow that they are going to tax it, it has accumulated, and I'm sure you're going to lose too much, because URA is very hungry. So I feel that, when it comes to getting something out of your savings, my pension goes to, I'm a teacher pensioner. My saving goes to Stanbic. When I went there, because I wanted to access a loan over my pension, they told me the government policy is that we cannot give you a loan on your pension, because your pension is supposed to care for you. You may have no one else to care for you. You need medicine. You need what? It is true. But then if I feel I want to get a loan there, why don't they give me just a portion of it, and the other one caters for my medicine? Because they already assume that at 60 you're about to die. Now I am 70 years, and at that time I was, I think, 62. They refused to give me a loan. So I think what members are suggesting, like we do in Parliament, is that people should not be allowed just to take the money to access it and take it home, but they can get a loan. That is my proposal. They get a loan over their savings, a certain percentage. They use it for their businesses, and they also pay interest, which will accumulate and will be added onto their savings. That's my proposal. Instead of just accessing it and taking it away. Some of them will lose it and may never get it back. So that's my proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable. But please, before I bring in the rest, let's address our comments or questions to a particular individual so that it eases my pressure in allocating the questions, because I might be accused of, hating some of the panelists for allocating them tricky questions. So please, if you have a question to ask, direct it to a particular panelist. Over here, okay, I'll pick Mr. Kayondo, and then the gentleman over there can come in as well. I think that will wrap up the round, and then we get the responses.
Thank you very much. I'm Kayondo Everest from Kasita, and I'm commenting about a number of issues which have been raised. One is about the liberalization. Me, I would have loved to see a competition, because much as we might be celebrating about these high figures, as long as there is no competition and we don't have other contributory schemes which are parallel to NSSF, you might find that there could be complexity, and you find that these figures at the end of the day are not coming. So if we are planning, we plan with the worst scenario. But the planning we have been seeing, we have been looking at the best scenario. Then looking at, again, because you must know before, I think NSSF was in the Ministry of Gender, and it left Ministry of Gender, went to Ministry of Finance, because there was so much money. With our government, which with a very high appetite of borrowing, and you will find, and now it is even inscribed that you are allowed to borrow from, to lend to government. Sincerely, there is a very big fear that, yes, anything can happen, because if you look at the collections, even in the current budget, where URA is expected to collect about 20 trillion, and 10.6 is going into debt repayment. Now, with the soft landing of these accumulated funds, anything can happen, and we must get safeguards. And then, finally, I'm looking at the jobs. Seriously, the majority of these youth we are talking about, where are they employed? They are employed on border and sports betting. And these are the best jobs now, which are very lucrative. And job security on these ones is actually very questionable. how are we targeting to make skills development so that at least our youth leave these jobs which are awkward, and then we employ them in good jobs which can contribute, and we see much more development at the end of the day? Because
This is the wrong forum, surely, for such a question on that. How are we going to do, how can NSSF contribute to skills development?
it is not going to contribute to the skills development, but if we are targeting their savings, how are they going to save when they actually not on an assured job?
All right. Thank you.
We are giving them the opportunity to save, because at the moment they don't have anywhere to save.
Okay. I think we'll get into the details of that.
And when it is competitive, that becomes better when they have an option, not restricted to one saving scheme.
But there is Kasita Mazima scheme. What happened to it? It was set up in an environment which allowed people to voluntarily contribute. You know what has happened to it?
What has happened to it?
Okay, we'll get into the details of what happened.
Googled it.
And let's have that last round of questions, and then we come back to the panelists. Yes.
Thank you so much. I think when such a debate goes to such corridors, you just know the debate is lively. That is just okay. I'm called Silas Augon, Member of Parliament for Kumi Municipality. And I'm happy you've talked a lot about taxation. By profession, I'm an accountant. Nobody, of course, would love to pay tax. That one is very obvious. Even during the days of Jesus, so many people dodged to pay tax. Unfortunately, the Lord said, please pay. Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. And to those who are supposed to take it home, give them. But people don't want to pay tax. But I have comments to make. One, Mr. Moderator, sir, when we talk about taxing money that somebody has painfully saved for several years, it pains me as though I was the one. I find it very, very, very difficult. A person is earning salary of 100,000, and you are going to tax it because he has painfully put it together. I have seen a situation where URA, for instance, has seen that there is bigger money somewhere, and they must run and say, we must tax that one, without knowing how somebody piled up that money to make it big. It is a question. So for me, in principle, I would think, if we want to encourage Ugandans to save, those who have gone through that pain, don't give them pain again, so that the rest will also what? Save. Once they have saved, allow them to invest. Once they have invested, please, if they make a return, now you tax what? The profits. For goodness sake, why do we give exemptions to big multinational companies, but we can't help our people who are now at that age of 45 and above? Why are we exempting those big ones? All the time we're talking about to tax the holidays. But when we talk about somebody who has worked, you are rushing to tax. What kind of tax man is this? No, I think it doesn't work like that. Somebody made a comment about taxing at the start and not at the end. While we were doing these accounts those days, we were told one of the sources of revenue, if you are stuck as an accountant, is delaying to pay your what? Creditors. Yeah? Yeah, not by bad manners. You negotiate that you delay to pay them so that you have somebody to invest and make a profit before you pay them. Why are you hurrying to pay somebody when you need money to run your business? You see? So you need to be wise. You delay to pay them legally, not illegally. You'll be arrested. I think if we did it that way, then things will be okay. Number two, it will also be wise for you to push your debtors to pay you quickly so that you have money to do what? To utilize. I'm now talking like a worker who has saved. Why should you delay to pay me until I've clocked what? 60. Most people probably die at around 60. Now you want people to spend their money on the day when they are burying them. That you release, get their money from the other whatever NSSF, and they used to buy a bull. You are not the one going to enjoy this bull. It is the mourners. What kind of thing is this? So I really think that as a country, it is time for us to wake up. Let people enjoy when they have the appetite still. But not when the appetite is gone, then you tell them there's soup and meat here. What will they eat? Can they eat really? I don't think that is the way. If somebody is going to benefit, okay, let us spread the benefit. After employment, somebody should get their money monthly as a percentage. Then at that 6th of yours, you bring the other bigger thing. So that they are respected. They live in dignity. Otherwise, they will be going early. Alisas alone will kill these people before they get that money. It is not proper. Mr. Moderator, before I sit down, sincerely, we need a lot of research to be done. This debate should be made more natural than artificial. Most times we come to Kampala and we bend in our computers, then you say the computers told me this is the solution. Then you tell the people. That is not the answer. For instance, I would expect to hear from NSSF when they are coming to Kumi municipality to consult my old people there. When have you come really? If it was about contributing some money for a soda when we are sitting to discuss with them, I would also be there as their member of parliament. And we talk about this thing. When have you come to consult the people of Kumi? Let us stop this thing of making these boardroom solutions, which are made between people and their computers and then imposed on the people in the villages. That is my view. It doesn't mean I've stopped appreciating you. You have done a good job. I'm here to support you. When the thing comes to parliament, as long as it's with the people, somebody once advised to me that as a leader, always stand with the weak. As we talk right now, the weak are the workers. I stand with the workers. You'll find me there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for appreciating. Others haven't.
Yes. Honorable?
Yeah, thanks so much. My name is David Abala, MP Ngora County. I have a few things just to supplement. One, first of all, I want to thank NSSF for the good job well done. Because a few years, 2 years ago, I got my savings from there, and I walked away. Now, I want just to say a few things. Now, one of them, liberalizing this service is better to me. Because as we talk now, there's competition everywhere, including churches. There's competition. Schools, there's competition. Hotels, there's competition. Even coming here, there's competition. Even looking for chairs. I remember I was failed to get a chair the other side. So they had to force somebody out for me to be given a chair. That's why competition is very, very important. That's where a good service can be realized. I know you have done a good job. Number two, I want to remind us that this country is being managed by a few people who are called the employees. I don't know how many million, but they're not more than 5 million. They're the ones who are supporting the entire country. They are less than 10 million, but there are 40 million Ugandans. But that's what I'm saying, we must be mindful of that category. Because if that is like a blood, immediately you cut it, the artery, that sends blood wherever, to the head, to the legs, what will happen? We are going to affect it seriously. That's why for me, in my opinion, we should be mindful. Now, whatever law we are talking about, we should be mindful of that category. Instead, we should not, in my opinion, affect them. In my opinion, in addition to that, we should be concerned about that category more than any category. Because even our being here, assuming there were no employees, do you think these hotels, people will be in these hotels? The answer is no. That's why we are talking about, that's my point number two. Number three, I am sometimes shocked when we are talking about this is a time we're allowing you to get your money. I don't agree with it. For me, we should be talking about somebody should be free to get his money so long as he's 45 years. Because they say, the scientists say, for women stop producing at the age of 45. 45. You can go and study. 45. This woman has now stopped and everything. I decided to say, we have surrendered now. And they are telling me to wait for more 15 years. Yet the whole system has accepted to surrender. That's my opinion. So we should not be naive in reasoning when some of the realities are actually very, very evident. That's basically one thing I want us to know, that I want us to consider. Then the thing called saying Parliament will handle it. My friends will be expecting a lot from Parliament. Remember, there are so many things. All the problems in this country go to one house called Parliament. All of them go there. What time does Parliament have to study each and everything? The most important thing, like somebody said earlier on, we must take hard decisions here and must provide all the necessary information so that we're able to understand the details, because for us we come from different professions. So, for us they say A level and it's equivalent. That's what the law says. But doesn't mean to say there are no professionals there. They are there. I want to be honest. That is what the law says. That's why I want to be open. But my name is Abala. In Ates or Abala means I say. And I must say it. That's why sometimes we have demanded that we must actually change, that somebody should be having a degree. That's why I'm sorry. No, some people will be talking about that afterwards. But for me, I'm sure and confident that please provide all the necessary information. Then two, I also want to implore my colleagues and members of Parliament. Whenever laws are discussed and passed, sometimes that's when you get the whole house is empty. I want to be open, but I want to say it here. The Silas is here and the others are here. They know. Some people, when we are talking about this now, scrutinizing another bill, that time of scrutinization, members walk out because I don't know why. I just want to mention this one here. I will talk and go back to Ngora, where I came from. And I'm also always open in my thinking. Then the other one is that this thing of talking about taxation, like my friend Silas has talked about. I know nobody likes tax, but all of us are surviving because of taxes. But because we are surviving on taxes, I want to ask government to look at this thing called taxes here properly. Let's not subject each and everything to a tax. When we do that, what is going to happen? We are going to affect even every sector will be affected. Like, for example, these people sacrifice their 5%, the employees. Now you want to get it from that the sacrifice. It becomes a problem. That's why my appeal to all of us is that if we want a proper law, help us for you, the researchers. Give us that information, the details, and let us know that information early enough. And even if you keeping that in your shelves, we shall also wait and wait and wait, and we shall pass a law with our thinking that may be not proper. I want to thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Thank you very much for that contribution. I think we'll now get back to our panelists. You've seen I've given our members of Parliament quite some good time, because this is very important, because now you would say that the future of workers is in their hands, because they're going to debate this bill at the end of the day, and definitely they need a lot of input to understand these provisions a lot better. I would like to run very fast to the points raised, the questions especially. But I think before we go into that broader debate, we're going to take a very short health break. But I'll read them through so that we probably there are some people that I really want, panelists that I want to input in certain areas, because it falls within their areas of competence. But for our viewers out there, we're going to take a very short commercial break, and we'll be picking the debate after this very short commercial debate. Now, for my audience here, we'll continue with the discussion, but you can feel free, to take that health break. Richard, there was that issue on how is this a win-win situation, because I think it came from one of the MPs. They need to understand that. Then there was the issue of more incentives for people to save. What are the proposals, the incentives? I think they need to understand them a little better. Then the issue of liberalization. And I think this ties in with, it comes to Mr. Were. It ties in with the proposed law on liberalizing the pension sector, and then now this one probably will give us good context in that area. And I think a bit related to that, there was an issue on the interest, paid to savers. How is that determined? What is the input of workers? I think Honorable Mbatekama raised that. And I think probably maybe we can expand it to find out what power do workers have over NSSF in making critical decisions. Then why, Mr. Kayondo also talked about the liberalization bit. Then reservation about government borrowing. And I think that's a debate, a discussion we are going to talk about, because in the bill, it talks about government being able to directly borrow. And we know already that government borrows quite heavily from the fund. I think about 70% of the fund's income spread, rather investment spread, is with fixed assets, and that is government bills, treasury bills and bonds. Then the issue of tax exemptions. Then there was a very critical issue which I think we can discuss about, the one of top-up schemes, like the one I think Richard was referring to in that discussion with that little interaction with Mr. Kayondo. But I think this one I'll give it to Patrick to talk about, because we know that besides NSSF, we have a number of other top-up schemes, pension schemes that are being run, mainly by insurance companies, but then also other initiatives like Mazima and the others. How did we arrive at the proposals in the bill? And I think this will come to Richard. Then on tax, I think, Jet, you'll talk about, there were certain concerns about the tax. Why tax me at the end? And then others are outright against the tax. Why exempt the big boys, the multinationals, and then tax the workers that work in these entities? So I think I'll start very fast with Mr. Were, and then Richard will come in.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank our members of parliament for their articulation. But one thing I just want to remind members of parliament why we fought the liberalization. You very well know that there is no trust. Trust in this country is not there. Even you, members of parliament, I see you lamenting a lot, even in the floor of parliament. I've just had one member of parliament saying something there. When time of scrutinizing the bill, they all ran away from the house. And that is the biggest problem we have in this country. Liberalization was very, very, very dangerous. And let me tell you today, and I want to be quoted. People had registered companies waiting to play around with this money. And they are still there. They are even lobbying some of you members of parliament. That's why I'm hearing some of you are still saying, oh, liberalization is still good. When people are fighting for UTL, you are seeing it here. Even the minister is crying. He wants, she wants to be killed.
No. I don't think that's the way it's... I don't think that's right. I don't think she wants to
I'm the one saying it. Because if you're a minister and you are saying somebody is after me, how about Oweri? She's protected or what? Because government wants to kill. If you are saying mafia, who are the mafias? So we are talking about things which are complicated. For us workers, we do our research. We did our research. We found out that liberalization is not attainable at all on the issue of pensions. We have done research in Singapore, Korea, where we found out that it was not what? Some people had positioned themselves to get this money. And we have to be very clear, and we have to protect our savings. There's no way we can romance around with the people, with the sharks. No, it's not me when I'm still leading this organization. And I want to be very clear, and I want to warn members of parliament, because this is not about debate. Please, you are not helping us. Help this country. Don't allow our money to be liberalized. This is very serious. We have seen many companies collapsing. You remember UCB, Cooperative Society, Crane Bank, and the rest. Even recently, Bank of Uganda is facing a lot of problems. But for us, we have stood our ground. You ask Richard how sometime I go there to harass him. And I tell him it's not a joking subject. This is our money, the hard-earned money. We can't play around with it. And I'm not requesting members of parliament, but I'm asking you not to allow anybody play with this act. We need to amend this act to help the workers. I'm very happy with the MP from Kumi. You have really articulated exactly what I wanted people to see. There's no way, even this issue of taxing, actually I'm going to make sure there's no tax at all on our money. You tax the money which once NSSF has used the 11 trillion investing, then go there and look for where you can tax, but not our hard-earned money. Then the issue of making sure our money is, we as workers benefit out of it. Yes, the money is for long term, and make sure we save for retirement. It's okay. But along the way, like you are saying, let it be a win-win situation. Let all of us benefit, increase more benefits, as you are saying. Now, informal sector, it's coming out, and this will help a lot. The border my brother from Kasita was talking about, we're already working on that as Amalgamated Transport and General Workers Union. They're already on app. Actually, they are trying now to save. Because we don't want these people, you get an accident, then you are completely nowhere. So we are going to work out with the NSSF. Those people in the informal sector will be able to save in a very model way. Lastly, you are asking me about powers. Since the scandals, those scandals of, I don't remember. By the way, Richard is coming was the working of the workers. We identified him, and that's why this NSSF is still stable. I request that you clap for him. We stood our ground when we saw that there was a lot of scandals in NSSF. And we met the president and we told him, this is not your money. This is our money. We must be on the board. And that's the first time when we got position on the board. Because we improved the governance of what? Of NSSF. Now, sometime back, they were trying to remove us. We fought. We even went to court and defeated them. Now we are there by law, and nobody is going to remove us. So these are some of the things we are saying. Let us work out and come out with good amendments that will help the fund, it will help the workers, it will also help. If the government wants to come and borrow our money, we must have a very strict law that compels them to return the money with a lot of interest, not just playing around with our money. Now, lastly, My request to members of parliament, we are going to come and give you our position as workers, but we request that you become our allies. Because if you don't, we also have where we can catch you. Yes, we are workers. We can also spread around the country and give our opinion and say that these fellows, when we were crying, they didn't help us. But I'm not threatening you. I'm just requesting. Thank you very much.
What Mr. Were ended on was a win-win situation. The workers win, the MPs win. Anyway, so I can answer a couple of questions. Let me start off with the liberalization. I have never said this in public. I would like all of you to Google a country called Chile. It was the first country in the 90s to fully liberalize its pension schemes. What it did is that they were dominated heavily by government, and the IMF and the World Bank pushed them in that wave, which also came to Uganda, to basically liberalize, and they went along. So go through their history and see what has happened. Big mistake. The private sector came in, as Mr. Owere was saying. They took advantage of the workers. They increased the cost of managing these schemes. As you all know, all right, one of the things you do not realize is that the fund has targets to maintain the amount of money it uses to manage your money. Now, when you are in a private scheme, that is not an amount that you have control over. Because one of the things that you do as a private sector player is you want to advertise, you want to get market share, you want to get a good distribution system. So you have to spend money in order to get the customers. So what ends up happening is that the cost of running the schemes increases. And when it increases, that is when the competition then sets in on pricing. So just Google that case study. It's very well documented. Today, Chile has reversed all that and has come back to having government take over the pension schemes. That is a good example of what can go wrong with pensions. The other examples that have worked very well is in the east of the world, your Asian tigers. A lot of them have thrived because of the pension schemes that are set up by government and guaranteed by government. Because when a private scheme is being run by private people, it's not guaranteed by government. But when you have a scheme that is NSSF, as I kept telling people, within the law must pay at least 2.5 percentage points to its members, regardless of whether we screw up, sorry to use that word on TV, whether we screw up or not, we will have to pay 2.5%. It's in the law. It's embedded in the law. So, and that is guaranteed by government. If we were not able to do it, government would get money from its tax, and it would pay you, the member, at least 2.5 percentage point. So that is a guarantee. It also guarantees your capital, which brings me nicely to the discussion that I am hoping that the members of parliament will do a little bit of reading. Because look at this slide. You will notice that, forget about what I tried to explain before. When you invest 54 million shillings for 30 years, the income that is paid into your account is not 50, is not 60, is not 100 million, is not 200 million, is not 300 million. It is 432 million. That is the power of earning interest on interest. That is what the power of compounding does to your savings. So when you talk about your money Your money is a very small percentage of what you eventually get. What you are getting, what you are investing in, is the power of interest. So I would like everybody to be aware of that. So when they talk about taxing you, all right, even if they were to tax, as everybody is alluding to, that they should only tax the investment income, it is still a big proportion of your savings. Because your savings are very, very small compared to how much you will get out of NSSF. I would like all of you to look at your statement today and check how much you have contributed, how much your employer has contributed, and how much NSSF has paid onto your account. The numbers will stagger you, I hope. So please, when we are debating, let us know the facts. And the facts are, in the new dispensation, you, the member, gets more, government will get more. And I personally think that these numbers can be shared with the members of parliament. We can share the models we've used, because this is not something we've made up on our computers. These are models that have been done by the people who've been involved in the business, and it happens to be us at this time, and we know exactly what it means when we talk about your savings. Now, I know that we like to play to the gallery. When we say that Ugandans love to save, I can tell you, I know, because I deal with people every day. On average, I see families who come to see me and tell me, I have a big problem. The problem is that I don't know what to do. My house is being taken. My kids have been sent out of school. I have a serious ailment in my family. I cannot resolve it. This is every single day. The truth of the matter is that we only are able to put away this money because the law has said so. Left to on our own means, we would love to spend this money and hope and pray that God will help us in the future. So I think if you really want to help your citizens as members of parliament, I'm appealing to you, please strengthen this law so that you can save, force, and I'll use the word, I know it's the F word, I'll force your citizens to save, because left on their own means, they are unable to save. But guess what? Saving, forcing them to save is a very good thing, because it will help them. Incentives, the issue of incentives. The first incentive is the tax. Okay, a lot of people don't realize that today they are paying more tax than in the future. These numbers, and as I said, these numbers demonstrate it. You currently are already paying 61 million shillings if you are saving 1 million shillings for 30 years. That is the answer there. You are already paying 67 million shillings to the taxman. So, if you really want to change the behavior of people, you need to use some of the tools that you have as a government. The only tool that you have as a government is tax. I don't know any other one. The other one, of course, is the products that we are able to save. And that's why we've recommended some of the midterm access. But those midterm access, should they come out of your main contribution of 15%, or should they come out of voluntary contribution? That is a discussion which I said members of parliament should have. Our recommendation is that because people are not saving enough with 15%, the 15% should be left for their pension, and then if they want to save for the other benefits, including midterm access, then they should save a little bit extra. And in order to give you an incentive, you can pay less tax, or you can pay no tax on those extra contributions. And I think that's what that's the tool that government has to be able to encourage you to save a little bit more from your own savings. I would like to end on one more number, which I would like you always to remember. NSSF today asks of you only 5% of your salary. I ask the question, what have you done with your 95% of the salary that you are paid? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Richard. We'll pick the minds of more panelists, but at this moment, I would like to, for our viewers that are watching us on TV, to announce a break. We'll go for a very short commercial break. But in here, I think it's time we took a quick, again, healthy break, even for our panelists, because they've been with us since 7 o'clock, so you can imagine. So we can have a 5-minute health break, and then we can pick the discussion from there after that.
This September, Madam Secretary premieres on Tuesday the 3rd of September at 10:30 p.m. Beauty and the Beast will premiere on Wednesday the 4th at 10 p.m. Elementary will premiere on Friday the 6th at 10 p.m. Asintado will premiere Saturday the 7th at 3 p.m. while the thrilling action-packed drama The Honourables will premiere at ATV. Turning on your world.
The exciting and thrilling #1 TV drama series, Power of Legacy, returns.
Ben!
Betrayed.
Sit down, let's get this done.
Broken-hearted.
She's confused about you and Craig.
A promise for love.
She's in love with you and she doesn't know it.
The struggle for power continues.
Because you are dead to me.
Who will be triumphant? Power of Legacy continues this September, only on NTV Uganda.
Steve G is a very funny character, Power of Legacy.
It is driving me to get better, to do better.
I was like, hey, stay from me. I have a kid to take care of.
Well, the kids.
I'm pretty sure people didn't expect me to be as blunt as I was with Rachel.
I've learned a lot, and it has been really amazing because the story is very rich.
You're going to feel the Django, and you're going to feel the Power of Legacy.
This September, turning on your world.
The exciting and thrilling #1 TV drama series, Power of Legacy, returns.
Ben!
Betrayed.
Sit down, let's get this done.
Broken-hearted.
She's confused about you and Craig.
A promise for love.
She's in love with you and she doesn't know it.
The struggle for power continues.
Because you are dead to me.
Who will be triumphant? Power of Legacy continues this September, only on NTV Uganda.
Steve G is a very funny character, Power of Legacy.
It is driving me to get better, to do better.
I was like, hey, stay from me. I have a kid to take care of.
Well, the kids.
I'm pretty sure people didn't expect me to be as blunt as I was with Rachel.
I've learned a lot, and it has been really amazing because the story is very rich.
You're going to feel the Django.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's take our seats, please. In a few moments, we're coming back on air.
September, Madam Secretary premieres on Tuesday the 3rd of September at 10:30 p.m. Beauty and the Beast will premiere on Wednesday the 4th at 10 p.m. Elementary will premiere on Friday the 6th at 10 p.m. Asintado will premiere Saturday the 7th at 3 p.m. while the thrilling action-packed drama The Honourables will premiere at 8 p.m.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Again, it's for those that are watching us on screen, it's the National Dialogue on the proposed NSSF Amendment Act 2019. We've already heard from different stakeholders here, members of parliament, the National Social Security Fund, civil society, experts in the area of tax, because tax is a major component of the proposals that are on the table. And we want to keep the discussion going. There were a few pointers, Patrick, that came up, which I thought you would weigh in on. I think you can take it from there. I think one of the things was how did we arrive on the proposals? Or are you convinced with the process through which the proposal were arrived at, and how can we enrich them anyway in that particular regard? And the other issues that arose, which you can weigh in on a little fast, so that we pick another round from the audience.
Yes, thank you, moderator. And on the question of consultation, generally, the law-making process is such that the responsible agency or ministry in government consults internally and comes up with proposals. These proposals are taken to cabinet, and if cabinet approves some of them, then they are transformed into a bill, which bill then again is discussed and approved by a cabinet and then sent to parliament for approval. So it is possible that before a bill is presented to parliament, that consultations are made. But it is also true that in many cases, when a bill is presented to parliament, before even parliament starts deliberating on it, like a case now, other consultations are made. And we have seen many cases where actually a bill that is presented to parliament, even before parliament considers it, such a bill is either withdrawn or amendments are provided to make it much better. So in circumstances where consultations may not have been adequate, I think this is an opportunity for different players, civil society organizations, private sector organizations, to provide an input to both parliament, and I'm hoping that parliament will provide that space, but then also to government, because I've already indicated that it's not too late for government to come to parliament and make some amendments to the bill. So that's why this debate, all this discussion is very important, and I'm very sure that Richard has some feedback already to take to his bosses. It's not encouraging to find that this discussion does not have government people here, because ultimately they are the bosses of NSSF and they are the ones that are responsible for this law. Now, you realize that we have a very big problem of social security in Uganda. Richard has already told you that our coverage is really very, very, very small. Call it 10% of the population that is secured within the social security sector. That's very embarrassing, for lack of a better word. But do you know that me and you pay salaries for civil servants? On top of that, these civil servants get pension paid by me and you. Do you recall that not many years ago we had a discussion about making civil service have a contributory arrangement such as the ones that we have in private sector? Yet, do you know that the civil servants, particularly now the ones that are from the Ministry of General Labour and Social Development, are mooting a law that is having both negative and positive, like we are discussing here, but they have not thought about the other version, where me and you pay a lot of money to them. And by the way, theirs, in the current form, cannot be taxed.
And it's generous.
And extremely generous. So for me to have a comprehensive debate on social protection, we need, alongside these amendments that have been provided, to look at a bigger picture. And of course, that brings me to the other point that I did make, that there's a devil in the details. And I want to ride on the issue that again was raised by my colleague, Oweri, about the trust. Most of the problems we have had with NSSF are trust issues. Most of the problems that we have with our parliament are trust issues. Most of the problems that we have with government generally are trust issues. In the current dispensation, NSSF actually lends money to government. Did you know that? Through long-term bonds. And I thought that was very sufficient. Now they bring an element in the bill of lending to government. When I asked the minister responsible, he said, you know, that already happened, so there's nothing big about that. I see it differently. If government already is lending, is borrowing money from NSSF, then why are you putting it in the law? Because there is already an existing framework for that purpose. Now, you go to UBRA Act, which generally says you cannot invest money from pension funds, such as the one that we have for NSSF, for speculative activities or for direct lending. So somebody will say, yes, we'll keep it there in the NSSF Act, or NSSF Bill comes on Act, NSSF Amendment Act, but you know we are already restricted from doing direct lending, so don't get worried. This is what is going to happen if this bill is passed in the present form. The minister will come to Parliament. They will say, we want to borrow money from NSSF directly. People will dissent and they say, you know, the law, other law, the UBRA Act does prohibit that. They'll say, we agree. However, in our rules of interpretation, a newer law takes precedent over an old one. Another person will come and say, hey, look here. Of course, now they will be now soliciting for opinions left, right, and center. They'll say, okay, by the way, a subject matter law takes precedent over the other law, in which case this will be the NSSF. So for me, if we are already lending to government through bonds, why doesn't it stay that way? So for me, Richard, government should move in very, very quickly to make sure that that particular amendment that has government lending is deleted, because if what they are saying is true, it makes it redundant. And if what they are saying is true, it actually saves us from any temptation that this appetite that somebody talked about. So my last comment is generally that the state has an obligation to ensure that all of us are secure in our old age or in circumstances where we are unable to meet our day-to-day needs. And it is very important that the debate moves beyond the NSSF bill to look at other social protection mechanisms that we need to strengthen. We have over 65% of the population who are below 40 years. This, in my view, is a window of opportunity. Some people have called it a demographic dividend. So if we miss building the capacity of this population to enter into the saving bracket, to catch them at this stage, it means that we are going to have a population that is highly dependent, because then they would have missed this particular opportunity. And then government will have to foot the bill. You know what is happening with the older pensions, the older persons? government is already paying social assistance grants for empowerment. Other social assistance grants for empowerment, and is currently covering less than 250 people, and is even failing on its obligations. It can't foot the bill of 142 billion Uganda shillings. So will it then, therefore, pay for a bill of people who will be in the 30s of millions? So that's why, for me, I think the bit of informal sector needs to be strengthened. Members of Parliament have already said some of them won't be there anyway. They won't do probably adequate research because many times some of these processes in Parliament are rushed. So for me, I think as stakeholders, we need to ask government to create time for this bill, so that as civil society organizations we can do research. The workers' representatives have done some research. NSSF already has some research. Let us sit together and see how best we can inculcate the core principles of tackling the informal sector problem in this law. I want to give you an example. One of the countries that has attempted to look at the question of informal sector, Ghana has attempted and has presented a dual system where people in the informal sector can make contributions. Part of it can be for the long-term social security, and the other is for short-term social security. In which case then the short-term bit of it, people can borrow money against it, or can even actually withdraw it at a certain point. It is a short, so it is long-term versus short-term as a way of motivating people to save. So it's a very wide debate, like we have already seen, but it is something that I think we can be able to achieve if we are ready to make very hard decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And I think I'll move to Jet at this point on the issue of taxes that were raised. And because we want to see the prudence in some of these suggestions, you are, a tax, rather you come from the accounting profession, which is really close, accounting and auditing to the tax world. Especially in view of the fact that, because we're seeing the shift from taxing at the point of contribution to taxing at the point of receiving the benefits. And I was picking one of the minds of, one of the people I was speaking to on what impact this is going to have on government's tax targets. Because, one of the main cash cows for government to mobilize tax is income tax from especially the people in informal employment. So how do we create that balance? Of course, as NEAMA prepares to input on the issue of investment, especially government borrowing directly from NSSF, and before we again come to the panel, rather to the plenary to pick the views. Jet.
Thank you, Charles. On tax, why tax at the end, not at the beginning? Of course, government would be foregoing tax at the beginning on your 5%. And by the way, the tax on the 5% is not that significant. If you look at tax on the 50,000 for someone who earns 1 million, it is 15,000. Of course, with a large pool, it becomes a lot. But in terms of the contribution to the 20 trillion, it won't be that much. But the biggest tax would be lost would be from government, rather on NSSF investment income. NSSF, Richard will specify the amount, but pays, I think, over 20 billion shillings in tax, over 20 plus billion. That means that government is going to forego that money now and collect it in future when you're collecting your benefits. What that means is NSSF is going to be able to utilize that 20 billion, reinvest it, get more returns of 12%, 15%, whichever, and continue to grow it year on year. And every year that it reinvests that money, it produces. It's like, I think there's a project called Send a Cow, where you give a cow to somebody, and when it produces, you pass it on to somebody. So if you have one calf and produces, you allow it to produce, and another one produces, another one produces, within a period of 20 years, you'll have a farm. It is that farm that Richard will have collected, that when you, a member, comes, you pick out your part, your number of cows, and then government will come and say, okay, I waited the other time, I was on the side, let me also get a number of cows. So that is the whole idea about the change in the tax model, which in my view is good, the principle is good, whereby you're not giving government money in tax now, and you reinvest it to produce more. By that, it means that at the end of your retirement, there will be a larger pool of money available for you and for government. If, of course, there is a proposal that government should only tax the investment income, which, again, would make the amount available to the worker much higher. The other point I wanted to touch on is, in the current law, the employer's contribution, the 10%, is exempt from tax. You're not taxed on the employer's contribution. But when NSSF gets that contribution and reinvests it, the investment income it gets, it is taxed. So the amendment is saying you still not be taxed when the employer makes the 10% contribution. When NSSF invests that money and makes a return, that return will also not be taxed. But when you come at 55 years, your 10% plus the rated return and your 5% will be taxed together. But as to whether, in terms of how Richard demonstrated that still the number is, the worker is better off, that is subject now to the returns that will be generated on that investment. And my view is, I think the bit of employer's contribution should be maintained in terms of its exemption status throughout, at contribution and up to when you withdraw. The other point is, if you look at the numbers, for example, let's say by the end of your retirement, there is, let's say 55, you have 300 million. The current bill is saying you'll be taxed according to the prevailing income tax rates, which would be the Income Tax Act. What are the prevailing income tax rates at the moment? At the moment, if your total income is 120 million, you'll be in the 30% bracket. Anything above 120 million is taxed at 40%. Anything above 120 million in the current tax regime is taxed at 40%. 40% is a high rate, especially when comparatively even within the region. Our rate is one of the highest. So to address one of the challenges, that how do you make sure that this saving is not subjected to high tax rates at the time of withdrawal? One of the safeguards for that is to make sure that within the NSSF law, you specify the tax rate such that it is not tied to the income tax rates that keep on changing. Because that way, it will be safeguarded. For anyone to change, you'd have to amend the NSSF Act rather than going through amending the Income Tax Act. Because if someone brings a proposal in the Income Tax Act changing the rate, it will automatically change your taxation on NSSF at withdrawal on your benefits. So the NSSF bill should specify the tax rate. And which tax rate should it be? I think the 40%, 30% bracket is on the high end. If you tax someone who has accumulated 300 million at 55 years, and you're taxing the difference between 300 and 120 at 40%, that's a huge take by government. Yet, the returns that NSSF invests in, I think we heard already that over 77% goes into government securities, which suffer a final tax rate of 20%. So meaning that the income, which should be taxed as the proposal is, that if government is to tax the income, then the rate should be benchmarked to the tax rate on the government securities. Because not everybody is going to be exempted. Banks put a lot of money in government securities and they are taxed. And it's a final tax. So that, let's say the 20% benchmark rate should be put in within the NSSF law to make sure that workers' savings are not subjected to high tax rates. And the other question, I think, was around why exempt the big multinationals but tax the workers? Give big multinationals tax holidays, and when it comes to workers, you tax them. I think I'll give my personal view, but Minister of Finance could have a different view. When it comes to tax incentives for businesses, just to clarify, the tax incentives that are within the law are not restricted to multinationals. They are available to even local businesses meeting certain conditions. In fact, multinationals have a higher threshold to access those incentives. But of course, even the minimum thresholds for local investors within the law is hard to achieve. If you talk of $5 million to access such an incentive, how many people or business people have $5 million in this country? But just want to clarify that the tax incentives are available to both local and foreign investors. And the policy rationale is to encourage investment in specific sectors for obvious reasons of creating employment, for example. It's those people, once they are employed, that they would be able to come into the social security bracket of contributing to NSSF. If they don't have jobs, they won't be able to contribute to NSSF. But as to whether to fully exempt the workers, that is something that Minister of Finance would find hard to accept, because they have a huge budget to meet, and workers are one of the sources of revenue. The only question, I think, tax is everywhere. Every country pays tax. There are a few countries which don't pay tax, the oil-rich countries like UAE, who don't pay tax at all. But as a country, we just need to make sure that the tax that we pay is progressive. It is not burdensome to the person who is paying it. Paying tax is, I think, good. What we just need to do, how do we improve the tax system to make sure that it addresses the needs of, the expenditure needs of government, which is good, and at the same time doesn't burden the individual or business that is paying it.
Thank you very much, Jet. We'll move to Neema before we come to the plenary. On the issue of government borrowing directly from NSSF, and especially, I would like you to, if you understood that aspect well, probably on the amendment, whether the terms and conditions of under which government might access this money really come out clearly a bit to you. We might need to know a bit of that, but an appendage to that would be on the coverage, because the proposals also bring out the universal coverage of workers. Because right now, the requirement is that at least 5, if you employ 5 people and above, that's when you can make contribution to NSSF. But the proposal is every worker, and that is actually in tandem with the International Labour Organization, I think, proposal as well, that everyone working should actually be contributing. But of course, there's that discussion. What do you do when this hurt the SMEs who are struggling to do this and that, because at the end of the day, when the employer makes that contribution to the fund, he actually factors that 10% in your salary negotiation when you're walking in. It's actually the employee contributing the entire 15%, in my view, but that is subject to debate. So, Neymar, you can weigh in on that.
Thank you. I will address the last question regarding the coverage of the proposal. Currently, we know that only employers that employ 5 and more employees have the obligation to be making these contributions into the fund. However, like I mentioned earlier, there are so many people who employ, like the individuals, although there is need for clarity in the definition that an individual is also an employer. There are so many people who are excluded by definition in the current act, so expanding the scope will cover a number of workers that are currently excluded. Whether it will affect the struggling businesses, like you mentioned, that is one thing, but the main interest behind the proposal is to also ensure that there is security for this worker who might be earning probably 100,000 shillings. Well, it depends on how much they're earning. So this will benefit the worker more. However, my concern is mostly on how the definition may be structured in a way that the informal sector is well captured. The definition we are having right now expands the definition to companies, partnerships, and all that. But there are so many people whose businesses are not registered. They are not in any way in any formal registration, and they are the majority of the employers that we have in the informal sector. So if that can be done to expand the definition, especially to extend it to the individuals and the other different people in that kind of setting, the workers in the informal sector will be captured. I will want to relate my submission to the voluntary contributions, because the proposal seems to suggest that members can make voluntary contributions. And this voluntary contribution, I myself can, on top of my mandatory, can make a voluntary contribution, but also a person who is not making the mandatory contribution can as well make a voluntary contribution. However, with this tax advantage, it could be an advantage, but to some people it might look like a threat. Would they? Of course, the bill is not very clear on what tax or how it's going to tax these voluntary contributions, but in case it has come up with a structure of how it's going to be done, would the people be willing to voluntarily save if there is a tax imposition on that saving? I don't know whether I'm clear on that, because we already know, and it has been pointed out, that we have a weak saving culture as Ugandans. So if there is that tax and most people don't want to pay the tax, will the voluntary contribution, especially when we apply it to the informal sector, will it make any difference? Are we going to make any impact to broaden the resources the fund is looking for? I'm thinking that we really need to address that issue of voluntary contributions, because it's not very clear according to my reading of the bill, and how the bill also addresses the issue of the informal sector has not really been well addressed. So I think that is something that we really need to discuss further. If we are to, like Charles mentioned, yes, he mentioned that, Patrick, it has been mentioned that majority of the workers are in the informal sector. However, you also have to note that we have a large group of the youth that belong to the informal sector, and we are now seeing migrant workers, people leaving Uganda and working abroad. How are they going to be captured in these proposals if we want to widen the scope? Because now the interest is to widen the scope and to ensure that all the workers, especially those in the informal sector, are captured. So I think all those issues are lacking. Regarding the government borrowing, Patrick has already analyzed that, and the status should remain the same. However, on the taxation of the investment income, yes, for the fund, our proposal is for the status quo to remain as it is, because currently the fund is supposed to be paying a 30% tax as any other business in Uganda. If you make a profit of your business, you're supposed to be paying that tax. So exempting the fund from that tax, it kind of pushes the burden back to the worker, because at the end, when the worker is withdrawing their savings, they will still be paying a tax, and there is no specification that the profits, like the profits made off the investment, will be excluded. They are included, according to my understanding. So we need clarity on that. If Patrick can, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I really want to jump in.
Yes.
Uganda, I want to tell you something. The fund does not retain any profits it makes. Every year, the fund gets income from its investments. It removes tax. It removes its operating costs. And everything is then distributed to the member as a profit, or we call it interest. We declare it every year. Last year, we declared a profit of 15% for every single member who had invested. That means that if we had not paid tax, we paid tax of almost 300 billion shillings last year, which is too much, we would have paid an extra 2 percentage points to our members. So when you say, as you've said, that NSSF should pay tax like any other company, it makes sense on the surface. But what you are also not saying is that this money doesn't belong to NSSF. NSSF does not keep any money in its reserves. All of that money belongs to the member. Members are shareholders, just in case you hadn't realized. So all the money is appropriated back to the member as interest. So if you don't pay tax on that revenue, the member will get a higher return every single year. And in the case of last year, it's about 2 percentage points. In fact, even this year, we haven't announced the results, but it's probably another 2 or 3 percentage points on the members' interest that they would have got. And the reason is that, the fact that once that continues to go on, because of the law of compounding, every year you're making more money on the money that you would have paid on tax, because now you can reinvest that money and get a higher return. That's why at the end of the day, you as a member have a bigger pot, government also has a bigger pot to tax from, and therefore the member has a bigger pot to take home, and the government has a bigger pot to take home. Now, there is the issue of, and nobody has brought it up, time value of money. Because if they forego it now, if they had taxed you 10 million shillings today, and they tax you 10 million shillings in 20 years' time, of course it's no longer 10 million shillings, it is a way less. Even if you applied the best return that you can get in this market, and the best return is a benchmark of the treasury bond that government borrows from the public, you would still be better off as an individual paying your tax later rather than paying your tax today.
Thank you very much, Richard. At this moment, I would like to open the discussion to the plenary again. Questions? Okay. Where are the microphones? Okay. Again, I would like to recognize the presence of another member of parliament who has joined us, Honorable James Kakoza. You're most welcome. Yes. So let's start with the lady over here. Yes, here.
Thank you. Mary Machlet Maende, contributor to NSSF. This goes to Jet. He was talking of send a cow, and then later somebody comes at the end of the day demanding for at least something. It is beating my understanding. Since time immemorial, when I started working, the account section would prepare from my salary, pay as you earn, and NSSF. So, to me, pay as you earn, I was contributing a tax. As well as I say, okay, let me also save my little money, which will help me when I can no longer work. Now, if the CEO of NSSF is saying already they are paying 300 billion, and that is the money which I contributed to that basket, which they are paying that tax. That is the second tax being taxed from me. And then at the end of the day, when I no longer work, when I'm no longer strong, the little package I'm supposed to now go and sit in my mama nkoe and enjoy from it, you also want to tax. It is beating my understanding. Please help me and put my understanding in the right order. Thank you.
Mama Nkoye, it looks like you are not listening to what we said before. We are telling you that your Mama Nkoye money that you are being taxed today and the money that NSF is paying, that is the current regime. So you're already paying tax. In the new regime, you will not pay tax on your income. You will not pay tax, NSF will not pay tax on its income. So there will be no tax today, if the law is passed, on your contributions or on the income of NSSF. But there would be tax on your benefit, the money that you receive when you go for retirement. And if you want to avoid that tax, then you hold on for another 5 years, and then you will get it tax-free. So the government is using tax to change your behavior. That's basically what it is. I hope that is clear. There is no double taxation.
Okay. Yes, gentleman over here.
Okay, my name is Yuda, and an active contributor to NSSF. I have 3 issues. Okay. One will go to the ED. He did mention that if the government exempts the tax from the NSSF income, then that will benefit more the savers. For example, instead of giving them 15%, you can afford to give them maybe 17%. But I'm looking at it maybe from this angle. When this burden is pushed to me, the saver, probably I feel more the pinch. I would rather have probably my 15%, yeah? My 15% as a saver for interest, and my money is not taxed, rather than giving me 17% and fattening the savings, which government will come now and clobber a very big, tax percentage. I think I wouldn't like that. You'd rather tax NSSF income, but do not tax me when I'm getting my savings. 2, there is an issue around.
Can we deal with that quickly?
Yes,
when they tax NSSF's income, they are taxing you. Is that clear to you?
It's indirect. I don't feel the pinch much. Yes. It would rather happen at that point rather than, taxing me like when I'm collecting my benefits.
But they're taxing you 2 times now. They're
Yes.
taxing your income when your head of HR is paying money to NSSF. And they are taxing you when the money is with NSSF. So would you rather that than they leave that tax so that you have more money? Because you'd have more money to spend. You remember the example I shared?
Yes.
Right? You'll have an extra income. Please put that slide back up on the tax, because I think some people did not pay attention to it. There is a slide I put up, no, not that one. There is one which I put up before in my presentation. It was slide number 3, 4, or 5 towards the end. Because I can't understand it. That, yes, neither can you. That's why I'm trying to explain it to you, all right? So go ahead, it's in front. It's almost at the end. At the end.
Can I
there.
go on with
Stop.
more questions?
Okay. Yeah, no. Let me finish. Let's finish.
Can we have it on the bigger screen as well?
It's an easy thing, yeah. Have it on the bigger screen. Okay. It's not there?
Not yet.
Okay, there we are. Look at your left. Your left today, if you get a salary of £1 million shillings, URA, before you do anything, before you breathe, they will take away 30%, which is 300,000 shillings. Then as soon as URA stops breathing on you, NSSF will also come in and breathe down and say, please give us our 5%. Okay? So we will remove our 5%, and therefore the total deductions will be 350, and you will get in your bank account 650,000 shillings. That is what is happening today. If the new law is changed to make sure that they don't tax your contribution, we will, as soon as you get your salary, NSSF will also pick its money. This time NSSF will beat URA to it. Okay? They will take your 50,000 away. Now when they take your 50,000 away and keep it for you, then the taxman will come and say, okay, fine, NSSF has taken its money, I'm not taxing you. So they will remove the 50,000. Now what URA can tax is 950,000. Now you know that a tax on a bigger number, on a smaller number, results in a smaller tax. So the tax now changes from 300,000 that you paid before to 285,000 now. So on day one, you will have 15,000 shillings more to spend. That is what this is all about. So even instantly, you will be taxed. Now, if you increase your tax rate, if you increase your contribution, supposing you increase your contribution to 30%, which is allowed under the law, that means that you will have even more disposable income to spend than you currently have. Number one. Number two, when the money comes to NSSF, that 50,000 of yours, NSSF will invest it. When they invest it, they will not pay tax on the income they get. So if that money is not paid to URA, it will be paid to the member, because the member, all the money that we have as NSSF, when we've removed our expenses, all the money goes to the member. So you will have a bigger pot in there. Now, your problem is, at the very end, you don't want to see that they have taken your money. But they've been taking your money anyway. Okay? And this time, at the very end, they will come in and they will say, give us our tax. But at that stage, you'll have a bigger tax. Right? It is the analogy he tried to use. Let me give you another one. It is like somebody saying, you have 1 bag of seeds. You grow maize. So, I say I'm the taxman. I have to get a tax on your seeds. So if I take, so supposing there are 1,000 seeds in there, and I say I want only 10 of your seeds. So you take 10 seeds, and then you plant 990 seeds down in your shamba. Then your shamba produces however many combs, then you get whatever. So if the tax authority leaves you to grow the 10 seeds, they will produce more, and the other guy will, at the end, he'll come and take 10% of your crop. But taking 10% of your crop, he will definitely get more than the 10 seeds that he would have got at the time you were planting, but you will have more seeds available to you to sell than at the time when he took them at the very beginning. So that's really the analogy I can give you.
Thank you, Richard. I think the discussion...
Thank you, Mr. Idi.
Yes.
I see, like, looking at this bill, like the gentleman said, the details, the devil is in the details. There are so many sweeteners, but at the end of the day, as savers, you realize that we it's a raw deal for us. My next issue goes to Mr. Were, and this is to do with the contribution from NSSF to Uganda Retirement Benefits Regulatory Authority. They fund contributing 4 billion to Uganda Regulatory Benefit Authority. As a saver, I find it, it's something, it's hard to imagine, because probably the assumptions that were made at the time when this body was being created was that you are going to liberalize the sector. Now that the sector has not been liberalized yet, do we, of what importance is the UBRA to me as a saver? So is it worth investing or taking my savings there? Probably that would have added more, probably maybe a fraction of an interest to the overall interest I get.
Okay, thank you.
The other
Yuda.
thing
Let's
is,
move it fast.
and the last one is, I remember NSSF team moved around collecting views at one point. And what came out from majority of the savers was they had suggested something like at 45, someone should be able to access a certain percentage of the benefits. And welcome the idea. We were all happy. But later, when finally this thing is out, that thing is nowhere to be seen. Because the midterm access that is being talked about here is only specific to voluntary, extra savings. So where did it end anyway? And what happened? And my last request is, I think, Mr. Edie, let's do a lot of dialogues, like Honorable suggested. We go and consult savers again, because this is, if it passes like in its current form, it will be a demotivation to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The gentleman over there, and then come back.
Thank you very much, moderator. I'm Henry Bazira, and I work with Water Governance Institute. I'm an employer and a contributor. I want to start on a very controversial point. I like to do that. Why doesn't the state invest in the people? Why do you tax the money that I've put aside to save? If you as a state are interested in my well-being after I have become tired, why are you taking my money? So that's where I'm starting from. And as an employer, it is wrong to say that Ugandans don't like to save. They're actually looking for where to put their money, to save their money. Even I, as an employer, we are looking at how best can we save money for our staff or invest our money for our staff. If NSSF was giving us an option, what they're offering is good. But if they were giving us an option where we can choose to invest and get that money out as and when we need it for further internal investment or other investments, that would attract others to contribute. So I would like to see a product that is, you don't have to wait for me when I'm 60 to give me my money. I'm already 50 and I'm on hypertensive drugs. I don't know when I'm going to conk out. I should be able to use the money to benefit myself. If the state is indeed interested in my well-being, we have seen so many contributors who have received peanuts and have gone, some of them died even before they exhaust the little money they have. So that to me is the social issue that I'm looking at. So yes, look at the scenario that you have. It looks interesting on the second scenario, but what is the impact of 15,000 shillings saved in real monetary terms? What does it actually amount to? In terms of the benefit, couldn't you probably change the model and make it also attractive? Could that be one of the ways that you would attract people to contribute? Then the last thing is, we have investors who are actually paying wages, weekly wages, as a way of circumventing the responsibility on NSSF. I'm wondering how we're going to be dealing with that. And most of these are foreign companies. I don't want to mention names. The last one is, this money is being picked from a very small population, less than 10 million, who are shouldering the government already. We have shouldered the government for a very long time. Now, I have paid you my 30% to contribute to the national development in the original plan. Now, you're saying that this is going to be omitted. And I'm actually seeing that the ordering, before it was URA, payee, coming first, off the money, and then followed by NSSF. So from the model they're giving us, it is now NSSF taking precedence, and then the URA taking on the second withdrawal. In a state, if you are interested in the growth of the people, why do you need the 30%? So those are some of the questions you need to think about. Then the proposed burden. Some people are talking about 45 years as a threshold for accessing the money. That is good, trust me. Biarhanga will not accept it for one reason. It is going to put a lot of pressure on him with so many contributors coming to collect money. And that, I don't know whether even he himself, with a small population who are contributing, will accept that. So I really want to look for a place where, well, I was saying it is difficult for you to deal with.
You're feeling my pain.
Right. So basically, those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please help me pass the mic to Honorable Kakoza there. I would like to hear from him, because right now, I think we did need to, pick a lot from the MPs.
Moderator, can I just say something? Anybody with a Wi-Fi connection, please Google Ghana's social security schemes. They did that about 5-10 years, between 5 and 10 years ago. And that's exactly, it will give you a solution to what needs to happen around here. Just Google it.
Thank you, Richard. I think they can. There's a Wi-Fi password on your right, the other side, so you can check it out. Honorable Kakoza, very fast.
Thank you, moderator. Of course, you've heard my names. I apologize, I've come late. But mine is going to be a request. I've been a member of parliament and on the finance committee for the last 17 years, making tax laws. And I've participated in Income Tax Act, all these laws which have been passed, and these also pension laws. My request is, because I want to form an opinion, because I'm a member of the finance committee which is going to pass that law. So it will be biased to give an opinion. I wanted to listen more. But my request is to the ED, because all of us, the principle should be one. If I save money, I retire, I need more money when I retire so that I can, where you invest it more, where I can save, it has an effect. It should be the principle and a common agenda. Mine is a request that Mr. ED, you engage with the government. I've participated in pensions liberal schemes in Namibia. The module we are using is different. When we are introducing an income tax in 1997, the government wanted to get more incomes and more revenues. Now the economic base is there. The module you are using on the second scenario is the law which allows government to deal with what is the statutory obligation when you are deducting the pension fund. If you start with NSSF, that's okay, but the government won't allow, because the law says you start with the statutory obligations, which is URA. URA will use the other module, the first scenario. So for me as a pensioner, I would love that even the 5, even the 30 should not be there. You get what I'm saying? I would love even the 5, even the 30, because there are two things. That as much as I'm saving, I'm contributing to economy because you are taxing me to save that money. And when it's flowed back and I get much, I increase the purchasing power in the economy to go to more revenues wherever I've invested that money. So I'd love to see that even 30% is not there, even 5%. So you invest in the people and you get more purchasing power in economy and you sell more goods as they are imported in and you get more revenues somewhere instead of just money. But as the current regime is, they must deal with the statutory obligation. They deal with 30% as pay as earned, then you go to NSSF. I think mine is we need to engage with the government and with the Minister of Finance to know what are they interested in most, where they can make more benefits to the people of the country and to the economy of the country. And that could be the principle. That's my
Thank
submission.
you. Thank you very much, Honorable. I think let's move here to Mr. Sona here on this table. Microphone here. Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Robert Suna from Tax Justice Network Africa. And Siatin is one of our members. I was part of the panel, but due to competition, as Honorable from Ngora said, the chairs were only 5. My humble submissions, because most of them have been talked about, and my humble advice to Richard and team, whom I regard so very much for improving at least the trust in NSSF. Technically, you need to do the following. The slide presented there comparing current situation with the one that is proposed by the bill should be improved to show all the scenarios, including total exemption, exempt tax exempt, and tax exempt and tax, so that you avoid so many of these questions. We would like to know if we benefit better by taking on the model you're proposing. 2, the model looks very static in a sense that there are so many assumptions which people need to know about. The slide you presented where the middle circle had so many countries, the OECD countries, may not so much appeal to people. If you don't tell them how those countries have been doing and why you think we can take on the OECD model, which in my opinion have other better, stronger institutions, a little bit politically stable, there's less of uncertainty about the future in those countries, which is not common in African countries. You may need to consider looking at those comparisons and model them in the current situation of Uganda, because what the worker wants to see is my money safe? If they don't tax today and they tax the other year, how sure am I that that time it will still be there? That has to be analyzed. Then the another one is, I think you may need to tweak the language depending on the stakeholders. When you tell this gathering that the first incentive you're getting is that you want to be taxed now, the government that I know currently is a hand-to-mouth government. They feed on what URA collects. Today, if you're going to tell the Commissioner General of URA that you're going to forego 300 billion annually in the hope that in the future that money will be much more for government. The Commissioner General has a 4 years contract running with a tax target. That would mean he needs more guys who are going to put more pressure on the fee-paying taxpayers so that he can compensate for the revenue foregone. So in that analysis, I think there's need to do a cost-benefit analysis. The revenue foregone is ABCD in the medium term, but how do we compensate it? Because I know tomorrow some guys in the committees or some ministries will be on the floor of parliament requesting for supplementary budgets, and they'll go back to URA and tell them you need to collect this money. So that political economic question needs to be answered. I think there's also need to harmonize the bills, the laws, NSSF vis-a-vis income tax, URA vis-a-vis UBRA, and other stakeholders, so that you don't cause contradictions amongst each other. before you present to Parliament. And finally, the idea of 60 years. I know some institution in the circles of Uganda where they introduced a benefit for their staff, and it was mortgage. And it was required that the institution is willing to take care of their mortgages on behalf of the staff and cut their salaries to cater for the mortgage. But when they did analysis, they found out that majority of their staff were actually about 35 in terms of age, average age. And yet the mortgages were required to be paid over a period of 25 years and more. Their retirement age was 55. So they came requesting for an extension of the retirement age to 60 to be able to enable their staff benefit from that mortgage and be able to pay it over the period of employment. Now, the risk in that is that when you propose 60 and above, majority of these other institutions would also say, I think, let me, for the benefit of my staff, why don't we encourage these staff to retire at 60? So those who are at 55 will also start saying, government, please revise our retirement age to 60. And that has a pressure on government in terms of expenditure. So you need to factor that one out. I submit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Suna. I think we'll take 3 more. The lady over there, and the gentleman, and this gentleman here, for starters, before we conclude with the other one. Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Lydia Namono, Editor Business, Daily Monitor. I would like to know, Mr. Byarugaba talked about this bill, the new bill, saying that if it's passed in its current form, any saver's current account will be closed and a new one will be opened. I am concerned on how a saver will be able to keep tabs on 2 different accounts up to the point of withdrawal. That's one. And then 2, isn't it a myth, going by the figures that you shared, specifically in the second scenario, where if the bill was passed, that I would have more in my pot, considering that the value of money keeps depreciating. So if I'm delayed, if the tax is delayed now, but postponed up to a later date, won't my savings in essence be less? Thank you.
Yes, I hope our panelists are taking notes because we're going to respond to those. Okay, Mr. Kawoya here has a question before we move over to the gentleman on the other table. Oh, okay. You can come.
Thank you. Mr. Kawoya will ask. My name is Derek Lutalo, and I work with ECCA. It's a Uganda Consortium on Corporate Accountability. This bill is of particular interest. First, as a person who's saving with the fund, at least compulsorily. My question is with the severance. How are we going to sever? At the moment, we are paid the taxes on the savings that are with the fund. How are we going to sever those that, if the bill passes into law and the tax will be deferred to the future, how will we get to distinguish that for this part of the contribution, a tax was paid, let it be as it is, and for this part, we will tax it upon withdrawal? That has to come out clearly in the bill. I found that to be a gap. The other is with the midterm access and the questions that have come around it. Right now, the bill allows for those who voluntarily contribute to access midterm. What if we extend it to the others that are also compulsorily saving for them to be able to use part of that money? You can put a threshold of, say, 40 years. Not everyone will be 40 at the same time, to allay the fears that my brother had. Not everyone will be 40 at the same time. You can put a cap. Say you can only access midterm, say 40% of your funds, so that the fund still has money to keep investing. Remember, this time we're going to have more in the pool and they will not be paying the tax, so we'll have more money available, assuming that that will be money that is available. The issue of government borrowing, I think for me, it is okay and it is good that the bill is bringing it out boldly, that we can allow government to borrow, because it is happening even in the other countries. After watching a clip that made rounds with one of the persons that worked with government, the lady minister who retired, it made rounds of people walk in and say, with a cheat, give me this much. But if it can be that bold with the fund to say, government is allowed to borrow, and this is the procedure they go through to borrow, I think that is okay, because we will know that our money is safe, and if government is going to borrow and we are guaranteed at any one point that money will be repaid, we are certain that it is a good thing that the bill is introducing. I don't think we should liberalize this saving scheme at all. In my view, the fund should retain its autonomy to guarantee that the funds for the Ugandans will be paid at any one time. Stanley, the other day I watched a story on NTV, these other fund managers, fund managers, Stanley and the others, were quitting, leaving the country. That sudden shock in the market, at least we are guaranteed that NSSF that is there for the nationals will all the time stay, and our funds will be safe, so that the independent ones cannot shock us and run, because they are running a business. If they can't make profit, they'll sign out.
Thank you very much.
Maybe two more.
That's the best point you've made the whole of this morning.
Well, I thank you. This law, my other comment is that it promotes transparency. The board that is coming to check the powers of the minister, it is good. But how am I going to be the representative of the employees at the moment? Can that be opened? Yes, because they are representatives of employers, employees, and the others. How am I going to represent? Beyond him, you have represented us in some forums. How can I stand and represent my fellow colleagues? And the borrowing, again, should be capped, in my view, to things like social service delivery. If government is going to borrow, say, to boost the education sector or health sector, instead of guaranteeing these other private players to set up a specialized facility, if government can directly borrow to put up that facility, I think if it can be capped by Parliament, so that we are sure as a country we are having a triple benefit. Thank you.
Yep. Then
thank you. My name is Frederick. I work with ActionAid. I would like to thank, I think, the panel for educating us on the bill. I've looked at the presentation Richard gave, and I see a shift in the spirit. If I look at the time this fund was established and what the intention was, it has been shifting and changing. And to me, reading from your presentation, it seems now it is to fund. We are looking at it as a basket that can fund development. And so the shift is not so much about it's about government accessing money, yes, because that is what I kept reading in the presentation. And there was a statement, win-win, and I got interested in the win-win. If you could go to the scenario you presented, Mr. Richard. There was a scenario presented over, I think, a period of 20 years or so, where you try to present a 1 million saved and the benefit where government can, maybe I can look at the screen here. I wanted to put it there. But
the two models, huh?
Yes, the two models.
Okay.
That's where I want.
It's on the slides that I gave to you later on.
Okay. But what I noticed anyway is that in terms of government, in terms of tax, from 1 million, they would move from 61 and the government would collect around 145. Okay?
167.
167, okay. That is the difference in tax.
Yes.
From me as the saver, it would add me from, it would move me from 300 to around 340.
340, yes.
In terms of percentage, my benefit is 13%.
Yes, increment.
Government would benefit over 140%.
No. It is 67 to 145.
What percentage increment is that?
You tell me. You're the numbers man.
140%.
No, it's not. It's
Okay.
145 minus 67, which is about 70. 70 over 60 is not 140.
Someone can calculate.
It's about 115 or maybe.
115%.
It's over 100%, okay.
Whichever.
Yeah.
It's over 100 and
Yeah.
mine is 13%.
Yes.
And this is win-win.
Yeah.
10%.
110%.
110, okay.
Yeah.
110.
Yeah.
Mine 13.
Yes.
Win-win.
But guess what? Guess what? No, it is win-win.
Okay.
You win, government wins. Government, you see, actually, the point you're making is very important because members need to be aware of this. Government is foregoing. That's what the Honorable just said behind you, right? He just highlighted that point. Government is foregoing this revenue today. In fact, the point that the gentleman makes there about Doris is the most aggrieved in this thing. Because Doris, today, if this bill comes in place, will suddenly lose the if you look at that number, the 6 million, the difference between 61 and 67, all right? She will lose the 6 billion immediately because that is what she's getting today out of that. She would also lose out on the 61, which we are paying her of the 300 million that I talked about. So that's money today. She's foregoing that to receive it in the future when you retire. And also she's taking a gamble and assuming that a lot of you will not wait until the age of 60 to be able, because if you wait until the age of 60, you won't pay her a single dime, all right? So government is definitely losing out much more than the member is.
Okay. I think that can be debated. Me, I went by the figures, and I was looking at what win-win means in this case. And this is the simple interpretation
The
by
most
figures.
aggrieved should be government of Uganda, right?
No.
And no, it's the most aggrieved, definitely. Because I know, all right, in fact, let me give you the numbers, okay? Because a lot of you don't want to look at the facts. You talk about sentiment. 70% of our members get to the age of 55, right? Or 50. So the majority of us actually retire. It's only 2 percentage points of our members who get their benefits under survivor's benefit. Those are the ones who pass on. But you know that the law will exempt the people who pass on and the people who are sick. All right? If you look at the law, it's going to exempt those who are sick and those who pass on. So if you put those plus the ones who reach their retirement age, there is a big probability that government is going to get very little tax. And please don't tell government about this. That's the truth. That's the truth. The truth of the matter is that government is giving you, the saver, an opportunity to change your behavior and save for longer and save more money and get it tax-free. So please, my simple advice to you, my job as a financial advisor or a fund manager is pass this bill and take advantage of what government is handing to you. I would like to answer the issue of borrowing from government, because everybody has talked about it, and everybody is talking about it from a point of almost not caring to read the law. What is the law saying? The law is saying, notwithstanding the provisions of any other law, the board may use in-house expertise or fund managers in the investment process under subsection A, which may, and I would like you to highlight these words, may include lending to government. Now, the big debate has been about direct lending to government. This law does not say we will directly lend to government. 77% of our investments are lending to government. However, when we lend to government, we do it through marketable securities, which in Uganda speak is bonds which are issued by the central bank. Those bonds is a bond program that the government controls through parliament, because they will not borrow through that bond program without them going to parliament for those limits. And that bond program means that they've got to repay it. I have said this in other forums. There is no government in the world that has renegated on its bond program. Because the moment you do that, the people who came close to doing that were Argentina. And you know what happened to them, right? The whole world ostracized them. They could not do any business with anybody. They ended up paying a haircut. A haircut basically means you pay interest, but you do not pay the full component of the interest. So they renegated on the interest, but they pay back the principal. So the other government that came closest to it, you know, in recent times is Greece, but even they had to restructure their loans. The other point that I'd like to make on government borrowing, please, always remember this. Government is responsible for printing Uganda currency. So how can they not fail to print Uganda currency to pay you back? The loans they fail to pay, yes, it's true. The loans they fail to pay is called foreign currency, because they've got to buy the foreign currency of somebody and pay. However, if they have Uganda currency, which they have total control, it will involve, I'd like to say this, it will involve a simple call from you know where to Mr. Mutebire to say, please print and pay NSSF. That's all it involves. So, obviously, it's not as easy as that, but the point I'm trying to make is that governments never renegade on their local debt. So, please, it doesn't matter who is in charge of the country today or in the future, they will always honor their commitments.
Thank you very much, Richard.
There was a third issue.
Yes.
Third issue on, there was a third issue on how would we distinguish between the money they contributed now and the money they contributed in the future. Please, all of you who are here today and those who are listening in and all who will listen in the future, be assured that the fund knows exactly what needs to happen as soon as that law comes in place. It is a well-known practice in pension administration that as soon as the regulations change on a scheme, an old scheme that has been put out of order, or sorry, out of existence is bound off. In other words, the accounts are closed, but they continue to earn the interest, and the new accounts are opened, and both accounts are tagged to that member. So when the member receives information on their smartphone, as we normally do these days, they will get information that relates to their old account and the information that relates to their new account. The technology is so good, it will be able to segregate the two in order to make sure that the member gets a total position on their account in the old regime and in the new regime. The final one I would like to say is on the midterm access. Ladies, gentlemen of Uganda, I would like you to look at what they've done in Ghana. Those of you who are saying that they allow, there is no country in the world that I know of that has allowed midterm access on their pension account. Anybody who allows midterm access allows it on over and above. If you look at the Ghana example I have given you, which I would like you to read, they have created 3 tiers. They've created tier 1, where you contribute 13.5%. They've created tier 2, which you contribute 5%. And they've also created tier 3, where you contribute 16.5%. That is a total of 35%. And they will give you a tax advantage. In our country, we are creating only up to 30%. But they've done it up to 35. They've then gone ahead and they've said, tier 1, the 13.5%, that is run by the SNIT, which is the equivalent of NSSF. It is a pension account. It is money that will be given to you when you retire, 55 or 60, I can't remember. I think it's 60 or 65, even 65. So it will be given to you at that time. Tier 2, which is the extra 5%, you can save it with any scheme of your choice. And there are 15 or 16 that they've licensed. They are private schemes. That is the one where they allow you to have midterm access. And Tier 3. So both Tier 2 and Tier 3 can be run both by SNIT if you choose, or if you want, you can give it to a private scheme. And that private scheme will allow you midterm access to do essentially two things. One is to get money if you want to start your business, but two, if you want to build a house. So, to answer everybody, 15% that you currently contribute is just sufficient for your retirement. It's not sufficient for your midterm access. And that's the recommendation we've given to government, and we hope that government agrees with that. But the other recommendation we've given is that we will allow, or we should allow, people to contribute up to another 15%, and that will enable them to get midterm access and get all these things that we are advocating for.
Thank you very much, Richard. Honorable, I'll give you a minute before we come to the panelists. I want us to wrap up before we go into the news.
Exactly on the issue of printing money, I wanted to correct the perception created that anybody can just order with a worker and then they print. No, no, no. I think if we go home with that perception, then as a country we're all going to a drain now. You know, you did commerce, most of you. And there was something, even before senior 4, they would tell you that any money which is printed without following a specific criteria and formula, that is money which you call money which is not backed by gold. I think you are all aware about it. Do you know the implications? Do you know the formula leading to printing of money? If we start explaining and calculating it here, many people will exit because they will not see the mathematics. They don't want to see the formulas. That is why recently I heard somebody was saying that there's an aeroplane which fell in Tebe with some boxes of money, and we don't know how maybe that is it is not a proper one. Please let us not touch that one.
Thank you, Honorable.
Yeah, money should be printed genuinely based on a criteria which is set. Otherwise, the inflation that you'll have here, to buy a loaf of bread, you'll have to roll a full wheelbarrow of what? 50,000 shilling notes. And that
I'm
will
sure,
be a problem.
Thank you very much, Honorable. I'm sure Richard was trying to give us assurance that government will pay. But very quickly, I want our panelists to really wrap this up. I'll start with Wilson. And then, because we are going into the news in the next few minutes.
I will just handle straight away the issue of UBRA. UBRA is a pain to the workers, a serious pain. You know, that is the time when we are fighting liberalization. These people rushed that law, and they passed it, and that act, we are going to pull it down. Honorable Kakoza, the UBRA law is very, very bad for the workers. Right now, they are taking all the money, which they are not doing anything for it. We have said this, and we need that law to be reviewed urgently. And I will say that with a lot of, and we need support from you, the workers. Because even this year, we would even get more interest. But the whole money is going to what? To UBRA. And they are not doing anything. All the work is done by NSSF. Now, somebody has answered the other lady from, my sister from the Daily Monitor. You have answered yourself on the issue of whether workers want money now or later. We want money now. And in fact, I don't know why Richard is laboring a lot on the taxation. Let other people do that. For us, we are not interested in those taxes and so on. For you, you make money that we, the workers, get our interest. And we enjoy, create more benefits. But I see you laboring about defending government, what? Even this money where you are now, we are the ones who have built this trust back to your what? Clients. Because we told the government, get off from the what? The management of governance of what? NSSF. And that's why you see some kind of good. Now, what you are saying about printing money, what? Those ones, I don't want even to hear it. Because what we want is benefits for the workers. We are the richest in terms of land in this country. Do you know that? NSSF is the richest in terms of land. Am I deceiving?
No.
Why don't we make use of those lands to build the houses for people? We have young population. Are you getting my point? Let us think beyond taxes. Because if since morning, I've been hearing taxes. There are so many issues in this bill. Now, since morning, we have been diverted discussing about taxes and the age. That is the fear. Let us look for things that will benefit that lower worker, the sugarcane cutter in Lugazi. That's what I'm talking about. The issue of, and I want to thank Honorable Kakoza. I know you are a very friendly force to the workers, and I want you to continue in that direction. Let us not be diverted discussing taxes, because first of all, you should, and I want to warn you, you know these fellows are very, very strategic. They are now using taxes to divert your discussion. The gentleman mentioned something very important there. Though we are talking about saving for the future, yes, but we still need to improve the life of workers using this money. We create more jobs. We create more benefits. That's what we are talking about. I want us to come down and talk about things that will benefit the workers. But this issue of bringing a lot of economics and so on this bill, let us run it down. I know, Richard, you will do this. The taxation issue is a diversion. We saying 45, you can even reduce to 50. People access the money if you are fearing 45. So that we run around that. You plan for the population of 70 what? The youngest, who are 73 and so on, in a different way. There we shall be able to build this country in a very model way. But if we sit here the whole day discussing taxation, it's a problem. Let us remove it even. I don't see why we need this taxation.
Thank you very much, Wilson. I think I'll bring in, let me jump the other side to the lady. Naima, your last thoughts in about half a minute.
Thank you so much. This was a very good discussion. We learned a lot. However, my suggestions to the director is to really address issues that concern the workers, especially the workers that we want to incorporate in this fund. Because the bill as it looks currently, it does not really address that issue so well, because we know that most workers in the informal sector have not really been well captured. So the spirit on that should be addressed. Like Mr. Were has just mentioned, the taxation issue is quite important. However, the issue of addressing the interests of the workers should also be paramount when we are coming up with a proposal to amend the bill. The other issue is also to look at the scope. Like when we're expanding the scope, we need to look at the Ugandan, especially those ones that we have noted that most Ugandans currently, they are not getting the jobs here and they are traveling or they're migrating, getting jobs elsewhere. How are they protected? This should also be reflected and thought about. How can we create a scheme that addresses all the interests of the workers in Uganda? I'll conclude by saying that according to us, the best structure or the structure that the fund should follow is the exempt tax exempt.
Exempt tax exempt.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Nema, Jet, quickly.
And we'll put that model out for number for people to see.
Right, okay.
I think from this discussion and other forums I've listened to, it is clear that the issues that affect workers are very important, and the whole purpose of the NSSF Act is to protect workers at old age. I think that spirit should not be lost, that it is your last bullet as a worker at old age that you should use. And we are now looking at what are the different mechanisms that we need to use to enhance that protection. And the bill seeks to achieve some of those things. Now, what we need to look at or need to share as we go out to our members of parliament is what do we need to do to improve these good objectives that the bill has. And one of them is taxation. We have seen that in terms of numbers, if you put government on the side on tax at the beginning and they come later, it is good for the worker in terms of the ultimate amount that comes to the worker. But the question that we have now, or we should be asking, is that sufficient for the worker, for the ordinary worker in the sugarcane plantation? Is that sufficient in terms of the safety net? If you apply, yes, you have exempted at the beginning, but when you tax at the end, does that sufficiently cover that worker at the lowest level? And that is what we should be looking at. How do we enhance it so that we protect that worker and give them something that gives them a safety net at their retirement?
Thank you, Jet. Patrick, your last thoughts?
For me,
Microphone, please.
There's a lot of things that are happening at NSSF, and they have been discussing products for quite some time. One of the products they mentioned recently was the health insurance scheme. I do not know at what point some of these products come to be part of the law. I know, of course, the bill is strategic to say the board may look at some of these products, but I think for the purposes of clarity, if that was provided, I think for me that would please me more than leaving it to the board. And of course, my last comment is on government, lending to government. It says may, the board may. That I still have very strong reservations about that. I know the board, the way it will be appointed. I know the person who is going to be supervising the board. You see the prominent role of Minister of Finance. Minister of Finance, the one who raises a request, being the one approving the investments on it. And the one, so clearly for me, if we cannot restrict it to marketable securities like he has said, I think we shall have a problem, and in my view, that needs to be clear. The last one is, in order to expand coverage, there are already opportunities that this bill can tap into. One of them is an opportunity that is provided in licensing. Uganda, every entity is an informal sector, including a law firm, including an accounting firm, a saloon, a small business. But remember, these are licensed already to operate by KCCA, by local governments, and by other agencies of government. So if the law can actually then tap into that, in my view, that expands the base. So for me, we have a very, very strong discussion about taxation, and associate myself with comments made by Weri. The area we get out of that discussion to focus on what a worker benefits, I think that is very important. On the issue of the informal sector, I already made my comments on how Ghana has made a step in looking at inculcating the saving culture into the informal sector, and associate myself with the comments made by Richard that the ultimate objective of social security program is to safeguard people against potential risks and vulnerabilities that come with old age or with incapacity. So mid-term access needs to be looked at very, very, very carefully. And in my view, in the realm of making, tapping it from the money that can be saved as an extra portion rather than the primary minimum contribution that a worker is supposed to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think our panelists need a round of applause. They've done a good job. You'll understand why I gave Richard more time, because it seems a lot of eyes were on him. And we want to keep this discussion on. Of course, as NTV and all our platforms will continue, debating and looking at these aspects, even as we leave this room. You've been a good audience. Please, let's give ourselves a round of applause as well. And at this moment, I would like to invite my boss, the head NTV Uganda, Mr. Johnson Omolo, who is going to invite our partner, the head Oxfam Uganda country manager, to wrap this up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles. I had avoided to speak because today is a day for NSSF to table the proposed Amendment Act so that the population, the millions of Ugandans, can understand how the fund is going to better their lives with the proposed new amendment. I would like to thank our partners, Action Aid Uganda, Siatini, and Oxfam, for having heeded our call to have this dialogue so that the fund can be able to clarify on the proposed amendments. Social protection plays a great role in addressing the issue of income inequalities in society, and especially to those who are working at the point of retirement. The members of parliament present, we hope you have heard. You will not walk out when the order paper is being presented on the floor of the House, like your friend mentioned, but you will contribute because the workers are your voters. Give his remarks. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Omolo. Just as a disclaimer to protect my job, I'm the country director of Oxfam in Uganda. The executive director of Oxfam is our own Honorable Winnie, who is outgoing, but nonetheless, I'm glad to be here and partnering with NTV. Ladies and gentlemen, as I hear people say, all protocol observed, but somebody one day said, I'm not protocol, so unfortunately I cannot go through the entire list in the interest of time. We in Oxfam are very privileged to have been part of this conversation. The closing remarks are basically to look at some of the things we've been saying from the beginning. Let me begin by, in my opinion, disagreeing with one major statement, that Ugandans have a weak saving culture. I think this is a fallacy of the educated. My grandfather had cattle, and he kept cattle as a savings. They had granaries. They bought additional pieces of land. This was way back in the ages. The only challenge that we have is that we have become a cash economy and people find it difficult to survive. So people live hand to mouth. But the culture is there, and rather than disparage it, let's ask ourselves, How do we cultivate it? Now, I think the issue we are dealing with, and I want to address myself to NSSF here, I think it's an issue of trust. Somebody said it's an issue of trust. Nobody trusts nobody. Nobody trusts anybody. So what do we need to do? In my opinion, NSSF should go out and educate the employers and let the employers educate the employees. And this problem will become lighter. Timing. Why now? When 2021 is coming. People are suspicious. Could this be a ploy? Could this be an avenue or a vehicle to something we are not seeing? Therefore, we need to disseminate information and disseminate it very well. About 2 or 3 months ago, I was in the US and I received a social media conversation and people were discussing this bill. And the way they were discussing it was all negative. Trust me, Mr. NSSF, go to social media with your message. Tell the story, and don't let somebody else tell the story. They are telling a distorted story. You're going to be firefighting and playing catch-up, and trust me, it will not be an easy sale. Therefore, go to social media. The world has changed. Yesterday I was reading research on how to manage millennials or leading millennials in the workplace. Their expectations are different. Their desires are different. Their levels of motivation and interest are different. And look who is debating here. All of us are 60. I clocked 60. The other one clocked 60. The way we look at this is very different from the way the other millennials look at it. So there's a little bit of a generational clash here. Let us get some youthful voices in the conversation. Let us get their opinions. Let us be mindful. The underlying word is transparency. Do not rush. Kindly do not rush. For those who are talking about liberalization or privatization, ladies and gentlemen, Uganda Airlines was privatized and liberalized. Where is it? We are beginning to try and get back into the skies if we succeed in getting the trust of the people. Uganda Commercial Bank was liberalized. Where is it? The Uganda Railways. Where is it? Cooperative Bank. Where is it? What shall I say? What shall I leave? I think, ladies and gentlemen, we need to be mindful of the interests of the vulnerable. The other issue that has come out in this conversation is immediate benefits. NSSF should not be the doctor who conducts post-mortem. Those products you are talking about, which accrue some immediate benefits, let them happen now. I don't know, and I'm not trying to be an expert here, but if it means finding ways of giving out something to the people to whet their appetite, to help them know that their thing is there and it is sweet and it is growing, let's identify such opportunities and do them. The 4 challenges that we all face, 4 that keep Ugandans awake, and Mr. Executive Director of NSSF mentioned them. Number 1 is medical. This is the leading cause of poverty the world over. Medical bills, medical concerns. You just need to be hit. The other day I went to buy tablets for my mom who is unwell, chronic illness, and they told me one tablet is 10,000 and I have to be buying that tablet every day at 10,000 shillings. You all know how challenging that can be. Education. We all are struggling educating our children, grandchildren, now children's children, because there are no jobs. And the children are busy manufacturing other children as they look for a job. And they bring and they dump at your door and they run away. Who here is above 60 and is not educating grandchildren or an uncle's children? Housing. And land. Now even the land, people buy land. I'm glad NSSF is rich in land. Distribute some of that land to us. Because a lot of that land is being taken away. People's lands are being taken away. Anyway, value for money. I think the underlying question people are asking is NSSF the best custodian of our resources? Do they have the investment capabilities? These are questions that are at the back of the mind, and so they reflect as opposition of views, but basically it's a question of trust. Build that trust. Let us know that we can depend on you. Sitting here and listening to Mr. Byarugaba, I must tell you, I was greatly admiring you. Your wealth of knowledge is expansive. Ladies and gentlemen, I live in the United States of America. I made the mistake of my life. Before I left for the United States of America, I went and withdrew my NSSF. At the time, they gave me 11 million shillings.
Big mistake.
Big mistake. Now, I have had to begin anew to try and save. I say to myself, maybe if I had left the thing there, it would have grown to 20 million or maybe 30 million. I would be a little richer. Let me tell you, the things this bill is proposing are the way to go. I know you will not like that, and I know coming from a CSO, people are saying, betrayal is the way to go. And I'll tell you why I say it is the way to go. It is the way to go because, and for the gentleman who said win-win, win-win doesn't mean you get 50 and I get 50. No. I am a Munyole, and in Lunyole we have a proverb that says if somebody has more firewood than you, they will also have more ash than you. The government has more firewood, it will certainly get more ash. But at least you also get some. Yes. And I think for me, if somebody tells me, yeah, you'll end up with 40 million instead of 300,000, there's a little bit of a win there. I think rather than just oppose this idea, I had our honorable member saying he's going to oppose. Friends, instead of just opposing for the sake of opposing, let us each of us take a step back and be able to understand. I know it is a lack of trust that we are dealing with here. NSSF, go and build the people's trust. You talk about land, you talk about this, and people remember Temangalo. And they are beaten hands down. And that is hanging on you. And now you are looking for our money at the time of election. And that's hanging on you. Okay, as I finish. I know that the NSSF chief asked whether it's their responsibility to invest in youth, train them, give them skills. And I say, sir, yes, it is. You can't milk a cow you haven't fed. Yes. Sir, it is. I am a farmer. I'm an agriculturist. You cannot wait to improve the crop at harvest time. You start with good preparation of the seed bed, the nursery bed, the seed bed, and then you grow, you work with it. In other countries, NSSF schemes work with universities. Give loans to the young people so they get educated. Help out, support out. You may not be the one building a school and running it, but you can partner with these universities which are struggling. All these strikes might not be happening if you got some of that big money that you're holding, worked with them, they give out soft loans. I would have never gone to university if it was not for free university education. My father took me through high school and he said, my son, that is where I stop. He sold the last cow and he said, now. Fortunately, I did my part. I passed and I went to the only university of the time. It was Makerere University. And when I got there, they were giving us boom. You know, what happened to this Uganda? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, NSSF, yes, it is your role, it is your responsibility. You only need to find avenues of how to do that. And I believe you can. And I think Ugandans will benefit immensely from that support. Mandatory retirement age. When I was 20, I used to think 60 was so far away. I wrote down resolutions by 60. I must have retired. I must have this. I must have this. I go back and I read them and I laugh and cry because I'm not anywhere near there. Friends, for those of you who think 60 is so far away, you are mistaken. Let me tell you, it comes very quickly, and here it is on me. Now, I want to say this to you. I am here to encourage you and say, let this 60 thing be. Let it be. I'm telling you, if you die, whether you die with money in your pocket, you are dead. Just make a good will. Your children and children's children can benefit from that money. Life expectancy in Uganda has gone higher. Life expectancy world over is going higher. People are living longer. I told you I live in the US. Now they have removed the retirement age altogether. There is no retirement age. If somebody looks at you and refuses to give you a job because you are 65, you can sue them for ageism. You can sue them for discriminating against you on the basis of age. That's why you see the judges there, 90 years old. She's crawling to the court. They are there. 3 presidential candidates in the US are clocking 80. They are there. So this business of thinking money now, give me my money, give me my money. I like the idea of saying, you have 95%. What have you done with the 5%? One time I was complaining. I just started working, I had very little money, and then they were taking NSSF. So I went to my boss, and I said, but this thing called NSSF, when will I even ever benefit from it? And you know those days, those of you who were there, then NSSF had lost meaning. It had. Now it has gained some meaning. But that time it was like, and then my boss said to me, he was a very good Christian man, he said to me, Moses, consider that a tithe. When you give the tithe in church, you don't look there. One day God blesses you indirectly. So, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for giving me a line. I'm going to use that.
Okay. Brilliant. Welcome. Thank you for appreciating. Let me finish. Consistency of tax regimes. I don't want to dwell on tax, but I think it is in everybody's interest to make sure that we delink savings from taxation. Every time we amalgamate these two conversations, the savings, the NSSF will lose out. Because people have run out of their wits when it comes to taxation. And if we don't delink the two, we risk losing because of the taxation conversation. Okay. I've talked about generational considerations which need to be made. Finally, because I'm looking at my notes here and I'm saying, no, don't say that, in the interest of time. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I need to go back to the issue of midterm early withdrawal. And I've already talked about the 60% thing. But I want to address myself and I say, I think the conversation around net present value of money versus current needs and benefits needs to be taken on. In your products, Mr. NSSF, you might want to look at two gradualities. One, gradual release of benefits. Why do you want to release this whole thing at a go? I have two people that I know. They retired. They got a government handshake called gratuity, I think. You know, they give you this something. One went and bought a pickup. It overturned in 1 month. They are done. The other one set up a money lending business. Lent the money to his friends. They have refused to pay. And he can't take them to court. The man is back to zero. So gradual release of these benefits, but also gradual uptake. Gradual uptake in the sense that we don't, and you know, things which are done by law are very dangerous. The law should not force all of us to obey the law because some people are wired to disobey. So, can you find ways of creating options? Opt in, opt out. Let some people opt in, let some people opt out. And when I was thinking of that, then you brought out the Ghana experience and I said, yeah, right there is an example. Some people can opt in, some people can opt out. When I started work, my employer looked for ways of helping out, and they came out with what they call the Provident Fund. The Provident Fund is an alternative way of doing the same thing. So, for me, ladies and gentlemen, I know I told my colleague who invited me here, and I said I'm going to be fairly controversial. Because I know that there are some mindsets in this wonderful country, Uganda, which require shifting. Attitudes to things which require shifting. It will take debate, it will take some hard talk, it will take some tough love. The world over is shifting, is changing the way we are looking at things, and I think we should not be any different. Ladies and gentlemen, with those not few comments, I want to say thank you very much for coming. I want to thank our partner, NTV, for giving us, please let's appreciate Mr. Mola and the team for giving us a golden opportunity. Now each one of us can go home and tell our people, I have been on TV. Tell them to make sure they watch the, is it 9 o'clock news? They will certainly see you there, and make sure every child sits around the table. We will all be there, but thank you very much. Thank you very much to NSSF. I think this conversation needs to continue. I think this conversation needs to be taken to the schools. It needs to be taken to the townships, like the Member of Parliament said. It needs to be taken to the smallest places possible, so that we all get educated. And I want to believe that in the end, this will be a win-win. The timing, however, should be revisited. That's my humble submission. I don't know whether you may want to wait until the winds of 21 blow, or you want to be blown along with those winds. May God bless you. I say all this for God and my country.
Thank you so much. Well done. Well done. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Moses from Oxfam, the country lead. Ladies and gentlemen, again, another round of applause to all of us who have contributed. And we hope that the discussion here, like we said at the beginning, is basically to see how to enrich the proposals and how to make them better. And I'm sure Richard and his team have really picked quite a lot from this engagement. And we hope to keep this discussion going on. Like I said, NTV has a number of platforms. both online and in traditional media, to actually keep this discussion carried forward, because we know there's still a lot of input that is still needed to make this a richer debate. On that note, thank you very much once again, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good afternoon. Thank you.
This September, Madam Secretary premieres on Tuesday the 3rd of September at 10:30 p.m. Beauty and the Beast will premiere on Wednesday the 4th at 10 p.m. Elementary will premiere on Friday the 6th at 10 p.m. Asintado will premiere Saturday the 7th at 3 p.m. while the thrilling action-packed drama The Honourables will premiere at 8 p.m.